And call the meeting to order since it's after 6. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call please.
Buckley.
Here.
Clerk Cody.
Here.
Darren.
Here.
Fuller is here. LaBelle.
Here.
Milky.
Here.
Shingles. Webster.
Here.
Squattrito.
Here. Okay, thank you. So we had our last special meeting with our consultant on March 20th, and you were provided minutes for that meeting. Were there any corrections to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
I don't know that we technically do, but we've
Okay.
generally done it. We can either let them stand as prepared, or we can have a motion to approve if someone wants to make one. But I'm not hearing any changes.
I would let it be as presented.
Okay, so the minutes from March 20th are accepted as presented without objection. Correspondence/board reports. Now, we did have a regular meeting a couple weeks ago. We have another regular meeting in a couple weeks, but I'll ask anyway. Any correspondence other than not related to this? Anything from the Board of Trustees of an urgent nature? Okay. Anything CBA? Your meeting, maybe meeting in July. Or
Tomorrow.
do you meet this month? Oh, you
Tomorrow,
do meet this month. Okay. And then sidewalks and pathways.
In a meeting yesterday, and we accepted our rules for the committee. We reviewed the manufactured mobile home issue that was brought forward to this committee some time ago. What else did we do? Soon I forget.
Approved easement letter to
Okay.
property owners on the north side of Bluegrass Road.
To finish the gap in the bluegrass, so we've created a letter, and then we'll talk about possibly looking at prioritizing a recommendation to the board about where to put next sidewalks, to fill in the gaps on our designated streets. So that was really what we talked about.
Good. Any questions for Denise?
Yeah, and the ones on north of Bluegrass, is that all the way from Mission all the way to Isabella?
Yes,
Everyone?
yes,
On the north side?
North side.
yes.
I missed, that's just easement or?
Yes, we drafted a letter to the property, that the township will take the property owners to get the easement. And then,
That was a problem we've always
Step
had
two.
there, is we never had easement put in from the beginning.
yeah, so
Why the
that's
road-
step one,
Yeah,
yes. To
awesome.
get the easement,
Easier said than done.
yes.
Okay, other questions? Very good. Any other reports? All right. So then we have our agenda. We only have one new business item tonight for this special meeting. Is there anything else that needs to be on tonight's agenda? If not, if we're not changing the agenda, then we can let the agenda stand as prepared without objection.
I have one comment.
Okay?
One of the things that we are going to be looking at in particular, it was part of our normal agenda, which is 6 point, can't remember, the solar. Do we want to have any discussion after item A? Because we had said we wanted to kind of move on that potentially.
Well, that item is in section 6, the first one.
But, yeah, but I didn't know if we'd
Yeah.
have a separate discussion, if there's any action to be taken at all on it. Because our consultant doesn't necessarily have to be there for that, right?
Well, do you mean, when you say action, do you mean with respect to the pending
Yes.
application?
Yes, we had mentioned that we might look at doing something with it. Maybe we have some thoughts on that after our discussion on it. Don't have to do it, we can wait till the next planning commission.
Like to see how long this takes us getting through this before we add more items to it.
I'm forgetting home.
Okay. So, I mean, we can always, I don't think we're I mean, it can even come under final board comment, I suppose. So, all right, well, we'll proceed as the agenda is currently set up. Public comment. So we always have a point in the meeting where individuals are invited to address the planning commission on items that are not on the agenda. So if there's anyone who would like to address us on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, they're invited to do so at this time. We ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comments open at 6:07. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that back up, and we'll move on. So we have our new business, and the new business is to part 2 of our zoning ordinance rewrite. We have our consultant with us, and we're doing chapters 6 through 10. And so unless Peter has anything in particular to say up front, then I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, Chris.
Chris.
We have some nice meaty chapters here this evening. And the good news is that we make it through these chapters, the last 5 chapters are relatively easy. So first section is section 6, standards applicable to specific land uses. And a lot of these land uses are addressed in the existing ordinance. But we've added a number of uses that we felt should be addressed, should have some standards. And those include drive-through uses, outdoor temporary retail sales, the solar energy systems that you mentioned, auctions, office and retail uses in industrial districts, which dovetails with something that was desired in the master plan. And brew pubs and microbreweries and distilleries, which I think we talked about earlier, and donation bins, and there are a few others as well. One thing that you'll notice is that in section 6.22, that deals with marijuana-related facilities. That's currently a blank. And I was wondering, did the board get a chance to review that letter that I wrote on March 18th?
They did, they received the letter, they didn't do any action with it.
Oh, okay.
No.
All
So
right,
they received it and that's it.
We need some policy direction from the township before we can fill out that section of the ordinance.
What is the board's stance on that, marijuana facilities?
I think basically the silence of it has become the position. For recreation marijuana, that was, or recreation marijuana facilities, that was opted out. They adopted a opt-out ordinance, and so that's the stance on that. The medical marijuana facilities, you had to opt in, otherwise you were opted out. And so by not opting in, you could take that the stance of the board is that medical marijuana facilities are not allowed.
So recreational and medical
You
are
mean
not
the
allowed.
recreational facilities?
Well, did I get that backwards?
I think so.
Okay.
Can you say it again?
The recreational
Yeah.
marijuana facilities, I believe that is the one we had an opt-out ordinance that they adopted.
No.
No, recreation.
That had been-
Recreation isn't addressed yet.
Okay.
We did opt out of it.
Yeah, recreational.
For
So
recreational.
they were waiting for the law, like,
Oh,
they don't wanna do
okay.
anything until the laws are written. But from my understanding, I thought that they wanted us to draft up something, so if it does, if maybe the next board opts in, we have it in place. The rules and like the ordinance, we have an ordinance there if it is opted in. Or something drafted up, but not in here, I don't know how they.
For recreational, right? And
For-
does
for
our,
either.
Facilities.
with the law changes, does our ordinances that address medical? I mean, I'm assuming that's quite a bit out of date, right?
Yes, it is. And,
Are you
it
expecting
addresses
action?
it, but it is out of date.
Are you expecting a temperature from the Board of Trustees on that issue too, then?
Yes.
S-
There
So
was a-
both the medical and the
There
recreational
was a
separately?
little,
then?
table that I provided on the page 2 of the letter. And there are 5 types of facilities: a grower, a processor, a provisioning center, safety compliance facility, and secure transport. And I think I defined those. Yeah, I defined those on page 1 of the letter. And so what I was hoping is that the board could decide whether each of those facilities would be permitted in the township by just agreeing to say yes or no in the second column, should the facility be permitted in the township. And if they decided yes, then which zoning districts would the facility be permitted in, and what the maximum number that should be permitted in the township. So for example, some communities are saying, okay, we'll allow a grower to be in the township in our agricultural district, and we'll allow 3 of those in the township. But we don't want a provisioning center which draws people in, and we don't want the rest of those facilities which draw people in and create the problems that you typically have with marijuana facilities. So they opt out of those other types of facilities. So it runs the gamut from one community to the next on how they select those 5 facilities, is what I'm saying.
It was mentioned a couple meetings ago. Well, I spoke to the manager about it, and he talked about the planning commission joining the board of trustees in the meeting when we have the representatives come and talk about the marijuana. I do know that. But as far as, I don't know, the board opted out right now, so I don't know if they want us to,
Do you know when that meeting is?
they have not
Scheduled it?
scheduled it yet.
So I guess what I could write the ordinance now is to simply say that the township doesn't want any of these facilities. Is that?
Yeah, no,
I would
that
go
would,
with that.
until that changes, that would be the appropriate way
That's
to
what
write
it
it up.
sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I'll do then. And then if it changes, it's not that difficult to revise the ordinance.
So to your point, we wouldn't have anything drafted up if the next board, we'd have to go right back and
See,
Hire a consultant to
hire a
have it drafted
consultant
up.
to
yeah,
draft
that's
it up.
why,
It's probably a big enough of a process that you want to tackle that almost separately, it seems like.
As long as the board understands what they're saying they're gonna do with us moving ahead with this wording that that the board has opted out. As long as they understand if they go back and change their mind, we'll go through this process again.
Yeah, you can.
Just
Do you
won't
want me
be-
to
just
tell
won't
the board I
be a
can-
packet sitting there waiting for Pete to implement.
I mean,
You can change your mind, so just because you're saying tonight to opt out doesn't
yeah, well,
mean you
no,
do.
that's what the board decided, was to opt out, but,
Yeah,
and I don't know if that's gonna change anytime, with this board. But there's
Right.
another board, new board coming in, could be a new board, I don't know.
right,
But,
right,
yeah.
okay.
But as far as, I can ask them specifically if they want you to write something up and just keep it on hold or something and not put it in here and just, I don't know,
Well, since we're uncertain for now, let's just leave it out and move on.
yeah.
Maybe.
Question, yeah. So, in the past, medical was legal within the certain framework that was the voters
Right.
passed. Recreational, obviously not. So is there a separation in the current state statute that separates medical versus recreational? Or is
Yes.
it all kind of encompassed now? It is.
Yeah,
So
it is-
we
it
could
is
address
separated.
medical if the Board of Trustees wanted that versus
Right.
allowing recreational.
Right. And the details of the recreation are still being worked out at the state level.
Right. Which is why, and you stated it, why the Board of Trustees had to wait.
Okay,
So I think that's a good question to ask them, is if we separate the medical and provide that legislation or ordinance, right? Do we want to do something that behaves similar to what's on the books now? Is that a reasonable approach?
yeah,
Maybe they're not for that.
Are you talking about for the medical facilities? Yeah, the stance as of now, because the township board has had the opportunity to opt in ever since the 2016 act that the legislature worked on and passed and allowed municipalities. The township has not opted in, and so that's the stance that I'm under. The impression is that if we were to work on medical marijuana facility language in this ordinance, the township board right now is not interested in adopting that.
That's clear.
okay. I'll proceed on that basis and see where that gets us. Question was raised at our previous meeting about regulations governing manufactured housing located outside of mobile home parks, and that's addressed in section 6.16, residential design requirements. And so that's a significant section that addresses a question. And then another significant section that I would like to point out is section 6.43, which deals with wireless telecommunications facilities. Both the state and the federal government have adopted regulations which really preempt local regulation to a great extent of cellular towers, is what we're talking about when we talk about wireless telecommunication facilities. So I brought those regulations up to date with the state and federal regulations. And then there's a new thing called small cell wireless communications facilities. And these are things that are put on utility poles in the more urbanized areas and to facilitate cellular communications.
Wouldn't that be an
And-
essential public service though?
No, it still wouldn't be considered an essential public service. It still would be folded into the wireless telecommunications section. But we address that within the limits of what the law allows us to. And there's really not much regulation that is involved there at all. You're pretty much preempted from doing anything in terms of regulation from a land use point of view for the small cell. And then towards the end of the section, we have several sets of regulations that deal with residential land uses. First, accessory apartments, then that's in section 6.56. 6.57 deals with multiple family and single family attached housing, provides standards for spacing and things like that. 6.58, open space preservation. This is something that's required by state law. Allows for open space communities in like your ag district and your R1 district, where you can make the lot sizes smaller and preserve some open space. And then 6.59 deals with senior housing, and then finally 6.60 deals with model homes, for example, in new subdivisions, and explains where those would be permitted. Does anybody have any specific questions about section 6?
Is somebody going to edit this document? And the only reason why is I caught a double negative on 6.13, and I'm thinking, okay, you got not twice, and it's like, that's an editorial, and it's like, is somebody going to edit for those types of
Well,
wording? So 6.13, you have not twice.
which item is it?
Says group childcare home shall not be located not
Not-
closer than.
Yes, so there's two knots.
Maybe it should be no close.
So I'm just questioning in regards to, I'm sure that in any large
Which-
document, there's always a,
Oh, it's 6.13.
Yeah,
6.13.
6.13B1, or sorry, B, or B1, is it?
B1.
I try to edit so that there's no,
well, again,
But
then my question is if we don't catch them all, does that require us to come back and then come forward to the board that you create a new amendment, or can we just do it editorially?
No,
So
you
if
can
those
do it.
types of things, if there's and then there's a disagreement in regards to what does it really mean, do you have to come back and have a discussion about it?
well.
If we don't catch it?
Something like that, this particular one is important to catch. But typographical errors, you don't have to come back and.
Okay.
But a double negative is something that is critical.
Okay.
So
So
I'm
when
glad
we-
that you caught it.
So when we read these, again, I just happened to catch that one, but, and again, a large document like this, it's very likely that there are others. We have to be more diligent about actually looking at it to find those possible mistakes, or will somebody in your company be the editor, just like you do any?
Well, yeah, I'm the editor.
Okay.
I'm the
all right.
writer and the editor, but
Okay.
there is a final process where it gets read through one more time.
Okay, all right. All right, I did due diligence then. I have a question about 6.17.
I have one at 6.13 while we're sitting right there.
Sure.
Why is a group daycare home a special use when it's a permitted use in all residential zones?
A group daycare home is not a permitted use,
Group
yeah.
daycare homes are permitted in all residential districts and agricultural districts. And then it goes on to say subject to land use approval.
Right. Right, the key phrase being there, subject to special land use approval, so you can locate them if you get special land use approval.
What is a special land use approval?
There's a public hearing required, and,
Basically, a special use permit.
Special use permit.
right,
I think it's just using a different terminology.
Yeah. I mean, the term we use more often is special use permit, but, I mean, in zoning and planning, other places will use a special land use.
Okay. But if they're permitted,
I suppose it could be reworded to say,
Permitted as a special use, essentially, is what it is.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause I see what you mean there is, I mean, by saying it's
Right.
permitted, you're basically just saying it's not prohibited, because there is, you know, later on prohibited uses, but.
I could change the word "are" to "may." Maybe that would address it, your concern.
To may be permitted.
Correct.
Well, I guess my confusion is that A, it says it's permitted in all residential districts, and then B, it says a group daycare shall be issued a special use permit. Well,
If the
it's permitted,
facility meets the standards.
but don't you have to, they go,
It's still only permitted subject to this, the
Special
special use permit. Right?
Right.
Should we maybe say allowable? I mean, something of that nature.
Homes are
Permitted means like it's already, I mean, I understand it's like it's already been approved.
right, now they don't have to come back.
Whereas
for a special
allowable
use
would
permit,
be
right?
like,
That's the way I was interpreting it, and that's why I asked the question.
but maybe my interpretation is wrong, Chris. I mean, something that's permitted appears to me like it's already approved.
I think the word may there
Yeah, I think the word
May be permitted.
"may be permitted" or.
does it as well. I don't disagree
Probably
with your,
addresses
so both
the
work for
concern.
me.
Yeah, either one. I mean, I'm,
The only
Yeah.
reason I asked that is, that a couple months ago, we had one where it was over in a B5, so
Mhm.
my lady was getting approved, and, my wife runs a group daycare home, and, I know the amount of traffic and what happens, and just seeing what she has, it seems really small for
Mhm.
that, to say they're permitted in all districts.
Now, how many children does she have?
She is up to 12.
Oh, okay. Well, the state law currently, trying to recall now,
And I'm not
I
against
think
it
it
by any
calls
means, I
for
think it's
special
great,
land
but,
use approval for 7 to 12.
right.
So, what we're doing here is consistent with state law.
Okay.
And 712 requires an additional employee, and maybe that's why they chose to do that.
And there's a lot of licensing that goes along with that, 7 to 12.
I'll change the word "are" to "maybe," and I think that will address the concern. There was another concern somebody had.
Well, I think you had one on 617. I'm wondering whether you care whether we go in order within this section, or whether we can just jump, you just want to jump around. Does it matter?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, because I have a couple that are earlier than that, but
Yeah,
I,
me
Oh.
too.
So we can just
I'm sorry.
we can start with section 6.1, and if anybody has anything, speak up, or we'll go, to the next one. Does anybody have anything in section 6.1, adult entertainment uses?
I do. On number 3 under G, can we make it 1,500 feet from a church instead of 600 feet? Or it's church, school, residential, or daycare? I mean, is that possible?
So right now, they have a 1,500 feet from one sexually oriented business to another, 500 feet to a bar, 600 feet to a church, school, residential district, public park, or licensed daycare. And you're looking at increasing the 600 to 1,500 feet.
Yeah,
Why?
to have a strip club that close to a school, or, I mean, because their business hours are the same as the school hours too, or can be. If you look at the hours on it, it's later in there.
What if we moved school up into G1?
And we can do that.
Because when I read
It's
that,
the school is what I
was
have the
one that was
biggest
most-
issue
yeah.
with. I don't mind the other, but I mean, the school is the biggest.
Chris, why did you choose 600? I mean, where does that come from?
That's your existing ordinance, I believe.
But can you write it right out of the Don't you have to provide a space for some of this?
Yes,
So
that's
you
the
can't
key
make your
is-
distance so stringent that there is no place in the township
Right,
that
you
that'll
can't,
fit.
you
Yeah,
can't
when we were
exclusionary.
doing the circles for this place, it
Yeah,
was
so-
not a lot of places.
So
to put it.
basically, what I guess we could do is, we could, look into the 1,500 feet. I mean, we can look at the schools within the city and the township, cause of course we're right next to each other, and I guess see,
Or just move
if that eliminates
school into
everything.
one.
What I'm saying is, we can move school into one, but then we also have to make sure,
The radius.
you know, I can check that myself. I can look at all the schools and do a 1,500 foot, you know, radius and see if basically if there's anything left, you know. So,
Kinda think so.
I mean, I would
It
think
was
that you'd
tight
still have,
When we were doing it the first time,
Really? Okay.
so.
because we were trying to keep it.
And I mean, we do it, when you take Mount Pleasant and you take, Union Township, we're 6 by 6 miles and we have quite a few schools.
And a big hole in the middle.
Yeah.
Not that I
Yeah,
want to.
put down, make, schools 1,500 feet subject to Peter's evaluation.
Okay.
And at this point, just the schools, right? Not church or residential, et cetera.
The school is the thing I had.
Yeah, that's where I,
What about schools that are attached to churches?
It's a
Well,
school.
that
I
was
think
counted
that
as
would-
a school.
It's a
right?
school.
So basically, if the school is operating out of a church, that would qualify as, okay.
Phew.
Like I said, you gotta see if it's possible.
And if not, do you want Pete to go and try and get north of 600 at
Well, you
least?
know what what I'll do is, if I can, I'll try to get you guys the information of what it looks like with 600 feet and what it looks like with 1,500 feet, and, you know, later on, because this, of course, is part 2 of 3. Later on, we can see if you guys want to leave it at 6, change it to 1,500 or something in the middle.
Okay, shall we move on?
Okay.
6.15 drive-through facilities.
Well, did anybody have
Mine-
anything with 6.2?
Oh,
Because we're just going quickly all through. Anything with 6.2, does anybody have? That's adult foster care, small group home, large group home, and congregate facility.
Well, again, as you talked about the special use and special land use review, do we want to stay with one language, so under notification, D, it says at the time of special land use review? Are we using that terminology, or are we using something different?
Well, the special land use is the terminology that's used in the enabling legislation. So I would recommend using the terminology that they use.
okay.
I would so we should use that everywhere then.
Yeah.
No,
Well, now with this notification at the 1,500 feet, this is just a notification for an adult foster care small group home.
Right.
Yeah, because because I believe the state statute is for special uses, it's 300, so okay.
Right.
So this 1,500 one only applies to this adult foster care small group home, large group home, and congregate facility. Okay, anything with 6.3 airports, public and private? .4 amusement parks. 6.5 animals keeping of.
Why would an amusement park accessory building be 50 feet from a residential zone, but an indoor recreational facility 100 feet?
Yeah, later on I did have noted on setbacks for indoor recreation.
Go over
Uh,
that again, I didn't.
Right here, we have principal and accessory buildings shall be set back 50 feet from abutting residential zones. Further back in our ordinance, we have indoor recreational facilities at 100 feet.
And I believe
Yeah.
that's even currently what we have in our current zoning, so it's kind of a topic
Right.
of, do we want to
Increase this or
keep
decrease
this,
the other.
increase it, decrease it, keep it the same, you know, the way it is? I guess, does anybody view, does this commission view outdoor amusement kind of, versus indoor as completely different, same?
Noise, at the very least.
So I guess, yeah, if you're outdoors, everybody's outside, indoor recreation, indoor.
So maybe this
So
should be
it-
increased to 100 feet.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Chris, just quick question, are all these setbacks in here, the 200s, 100s, 50s, 1500, 600, are all these numbers you just took straight from our current ordinance?
Where there's an existing standard in the ordinance, yes.
Okay, and then if we didn't have anything existing, then you,
It's my judgment.
based on what your experience and what you've
Right.
done in other municipalities.
Right.
Okay.
Am I reading on the building setbacks, or am I just reading too much into this when we say a minimum setback of 50 feet from an abutting residential zoning district? That's the
Property.
district itself, not
the,
existing residences.
yeah, not the
That's right.
residential dwelling, yeah.
Two-
it would be
200
to
feet
the-
from a dwelling.
Right.
So if it's a residentially zoned property, but there's no dwelling, you just have to look at the 50 feet. If it's a residential district, has a dwelling, or if it's not even a residential district and has a residential dwelling, you have to look at the 200. But so right now, Alex, you had mentioned increasing that 50 to 100?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I have in my notes. Anything else in 6.4? Or 6.3, 6.2, 6.1? Moving on to 6.5, animals keeping of.
Just a wording, 6.5, point D, point 2, I think there's a foul, F-O-U-L, where I think it should be F-O-W-L.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming this largely came from our existing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking R2 allowed, like birds, like ducks or chickens.
Well, so the question I wanted to bring up is, right now you have, so it says livestock and fowl, except as specified in the R1 district, no livestock or fowl may be kept in any residential district or within 100 feet of a residential district boundary. But then when you go to, under exceptions, D2, says up to 4 fowl or fur-bearing animals may be kept in any district for educational programs. Ordinance doesn't really specify what educational programs are. And also, another item that I wanted to include is if we still want to allow this, do we want to put any kind of restriction saying that these fur-bearing animals or fowl have to be, fenced in or anything? Because right now it just says there's an exception. You can have up to 4 as long as it's for educational programs in any district.
So I can keep 4 meat chickens in my backyard as long as I teach the kids walk past how the chickens lay their eggs.
Well, because we have, was it the 4-H club? I think they have programs where
I
they
see.
keep chickens and
I see.
educate. But so the one is, do we want to specify exactly what qualifies as an educational program? And also, do we want to say that, okay, you can have it for educational programs, but as you said, they have to be in the rear yard, has to be fenced in. Or if, I guess you don't wanna use the term fenced in, you know, kept on property, restricted to property. I know this has also been a big thing with chickens, throughout the state of people owning chickens in residential, so.
Well, that's what I'm curious is whether or not we want to address that in any districts.
Is this always dealt with in a zoning ordinance, or would you ever have like a police powers ordinance involving animals and their control? And does the township have that now?
No, we don't have anything in our regular ordinances.
Okay.
Because like
So-
in R3 doesn't make as much sense as it would in an R1 to have some chickens.
Yeah, that'd be a multifamily. But I mean, even in R2A, R2B,
Right.
medium density and low density. Because right now in our ordinance, and this comes from our ordinances, you can live in R2A, R2B, R3, you know, and it says for any district.
Or student housing on Bluegrass, they could have chickens.
Unless it, you know, says something in their lease that they can, you know, that would trump the zoning, but, if, you know. So I didn't know if anybody's aware of this or not, but I mean, that's, if you wanna keep it, if you wanna look at, you know, what, I guess how we could restrict it within, you know, state law. But, just something I wanted to bring up.
I think that, I mean, I would be open to the notion of allowing some sort of fowl in a residential district, but I think that if we're not going to do it, I think we need to clarify what an educational program is, because otherwise anybody can just say, well, I got 4 chickens and it's educational. So,
Teaching my kids how to farm.
Yeah.
Chris, would this be
4-H.
I think you-
educational programs, should we define that in our definitions? So
I
we
would
have time-
probably define it right here in this section.
and then
We don't see this anyplace else where we would,
No.
I also would have them fenced in or something, so they don't just have them running wild. If you're gonna have them
We just say enclosed, because,
enclosed, yeah,
yeah,
somehow,
something, trying to think something that encompasses all types of barriers.
within a cage, anything, you know.
Yeah,
Enclosed
cage-free
would
is
work.
what we're going for.
Good point.
I think it's,
Well, and I guess that's why I also threw out the,
Free range.
yeah, I mean, that's where I also threw out the idea that, okay, you're allowed to have them, but they have to be contained on your
Enclosed.
property,
Yeah.
you know. So however you wanna contain them, but they can't just be running all over the neighborhood
Can
on
we
other
just say
people's,
restricted to your property?
restricted to your property.
Restricted leaves it pretty vague as to how you keep it.
Right.
I would say restricted to the rear yard.
Restricted to the rear yard.
Yeah, I mean, does somebody really want to have a neighbor that they got a half dozen chickens behind chicken wire in the front yard?
Yeah, sure.
Because chickens scratch.
Is it abiding by setbacks? You know, like, would you want it right up to the rear yard where your neighbor could be?
Having a pool or something.
Well, you know, I mean, that's another thing to think about, is if you are going to have any kind of containment or restriction, you know, yeah, is it gonna be in the side yard, the rear yard? How close to the setback?
What kind of housekeeping?
So, I mean,
Right,
that's,
being
we
neighbor.
don't have to dedicate all the time now to, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there and, you know, maybe Chris, you can come up with,
Yeah, let
Some
me work on
suggestions.
that. Mhm. I'll work on
It's contained to the
Okay.
kitchen in a frying pan.
Yeah.
Was I thinking out loud? I'm sorry.
so the,
Not the place.
anything else in 6.5, keeping of animals?
So the addressing of like horses can't be less than 5 acres. Is that how I'm reading it? Can't be less than 5 acres?
Yep, minimum lot size is 5 acres.
Do we specify, do we wanna specify with the larger animals how many they're allowed?
Or wait, but the,
Or is that ag?
hold on,
Those
the,
are
where you're,
neighborhood.
so hold on, the,
What are you doing?
Down here, is that ag? Lalonde?
Probably ag, yeah.
That was ag. But,
are horses considered livestock?
I
I
thought they
thought
were.
so.
well, it
Yeah.
says,
I think so.
yeah.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So do we need to specify any quantity per acre?
Says no livestock. This says no livestock. It says that you can't have any.
I mean, because the keeping of animals section in our ordinance, it basically is referring to not, because there's also a part in the ordinance that refers to, was it customary agricultural,
Right.
Right. We have people that keep pigs as pets.
yeah.
We have resident that keeps the horse in their house. Inside.
I just think we're gonna have to address something. We have very large parcels that people are gonna push the limit, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we ought to throw some numbers at it, or take a shot at it at least.
Mm-hmm. I also don't see anything here. We have boarding kennels, which would cover dogs. I don't see anything that addresses breeders. It says that the keeping of dogs must be kept for personal use, not commercial purposes. But a breeder could very possibly have more than 4 breeding dogs if they're keeping studs with them. And it's not even contained within this in terms of a commercial breeder, but this says to have more than 4 dogs, you gotta have a minimum lot size of 5 acres. If we had somebody breeding pups, they gotta have 5 acres to breed pups.
So you're looking at maybe adding some kind of languages to address breeders?
I think we should address dog breeders. I mean, they,
Almost fits under boarding kennels, doesn't it? I mean, reading through that. Things that if
well, I mean, it's a different use. I mean, it's
Yeah.
boarding
It
kennels
is,
are
yeah.
for boarding somebody else's dog. Breeder is for the purpose of making dogs and selling them.
Right. Keeping of more than 4 dogs 6 months or older, it says there.
Yeah, for number 1 there, the exception number 1 is only, right, that's talking about as pets. I mean, it doesn't address, it stipulates that it's for personal use and not for commercial purposes, under 1D. But even if that didn't stipulate that, the minimum lot size would still be, I think, excessive for a breeder. 5 acres is pretty excessive to be able to keep 5 dogs and have a litter 4 times a year.
I like the idea of putting it in boarding kennels.
Well, could you just do another one, F, breeders?
Yeah.
the disadvantage of that is then you've got no regulation over it. So I mean, if you're a commercial breeder, right, maybe you have outside dog runs or.
Should be a home occupation.
Good point.
It just feels like we should address breeders.
Yeah, no, I
Agreed.
think that's what we come out of the,
Yeah, I agree with Alex that would allow the planning commission to deal with any special conditions we would need at that time.
I like it.
Okay.
Did you get that, all that, Chris?
Yeah.
We just
So
went
we-
4 different directions.
yeah. So I don't know if we skipped down to 6.8, but was there anything with 6.6 and 6.7 that's automobile or vehicle storage, and then auto wash establishments? The automobile vehicle storage looks to be the same language that we currently have in our zoning ordinance.
We really allow 3 inoperable vehicles.
Well, if
No,
one's tied
three,
to the
no,
tree,
3 or more is a junkyard.
So we
If
allow
it's not touching
2.
the ground.
2 inoperable vehicles.
You can have 2 inoperable vehicles in the side or rear yard as long as they're locked.
Boy, I'd be knocking on your door every day if I had 2 inoperable vehicles sitting next door to me.
In the side yard?
Yeah.
Now's the time to change it. if you
Yeah, I
wanna
mean, it's,
change it.
do you guys wanna limit that to only 1? None?
I
I mean, I understand.
Because what if you're taking two
Yeah.
cars and combining them to make one, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, I mean, I'd at least just make it 2.
I agree too. You buy a parts car to build your car that's not
Yeah.
running, so I mean,
And a camper's not a vehicle.
Correct.
Yeah,
I'm not
my
again-
dad restores like Model A's and stuff, so he's got several, but he keeps them inside. And
Well, I guess that'd be my question is, if you want to build your own car out of other inoperable cars, what gives you the right to store the cars outside if you want to do that?
Maybe
I'm not
put
against
them
the
in
purpose,
garage.
I'm not against the use of doing that, but I'm only trying to use the standard I would use if it was my neighbor. Do you guys want 2 inoperable cars sitting next to you in your yards? If the answer is yes, I don't care, then let's skip it.
Well, and I guess that's the other thing is if you own a property and there's no garage, there's just the house, and so they have no garage to store it in. If you're up, you know.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean,
Let the grass grow up.
Real high, yeah. Black out.
I mean, that's just a situation where I was thinking, like, because you bring up a good point. If you have a garage, you can just park your operable vehicle outside, use the garage for, you know, the inoperable. But then if you're a person that, you know, there's no garage, you just have the house and there's no attached garage or detached garage, so.
I mean, I might collect aluminum cans, but that doesn't mean I can make a mountain of them outside my yard.
No, yeah, understandable.
But I mean, can't you just
there's
put a
lot of
limit on it
people in
or
this
something?
township that are less economically
Instead, I'm just saying, 'cause I've taken 2 cars and put them together, so I'm just saying.
No,
I'm
yeah,
just saying
yeah.
to-
I mean,
Yeah, no,
But I would
that's
put it
why I brought up
inside
the
the house,
point of
but
if you don't have a
I'm saying-
garage, so.
I didn't have
There are
garage.
many people that don't have garages around.
Yeah.
And they tend to do their own auto work because they can't afford a
Absolutely.
mechanic.
Yeah.
But we're talking about inoperable cars. We're not talking about somebody that's keeping a car outdoors or even keeping one inoperable car outdoors. I mean, if somebody's doing their own mechanic work, I mean, I've gone to the junkyard many times, gotten the part I needed, come back, put it on my car, or paid somebody else to put it on my car. I'm not,
I'm comfortable with 2.
yeah, I'm not
One
gonna,
is not.
I'd do it 2.
Do these vehicles need to be licensed?
This is inoperable.
It just
Yeah, but
says, yeah,
they can still be licensed. The question is, do they still have to be licensed?
no.
They just have to be locked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna fall on my sword over it, and I'd prefer it was 1.
Ooh, 2.
So anything with auto wash establishments, 6, 7. I didn't have anything with auto wash. So 6, 8 boarding kennels, we kind of briefly discussed that. I don't want to go into a big discussion on one thing that I wanted to add, but it's just an idea that I've heard from a couple of interested parties that have called me before is so you have boarding kennels, they're allowed as a permitted use in an I-1, I-2, as a special use in ag districts. The idea of possibly allowing for a boarding of animals in business districts, an idea that's been pitched to me before is, somebody, I guess, operating a business, not located in an industrial or an ag zone, to where, you want to drop off your cat or your dog for you're going away for a week or 2 weeks. Right now, we don't really have anything that kind of speaks to allowing that kind of business in a business district. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for you guys to think about.
It's not uncommon for a vet.
Well,
at
but-
a vet office.
But, and currently veterinarians in our ordinance, they wouldn't be allowed to do that unless they're operating.
Right, but I
in
mean,
and
that
out.
is a common practice,
Yeah.
so for vets
Yeah.
to board in the same office that they do the
You're,
service.
you're saying, Peter, that they wouldn't be allowed to do
Unless
that?
they're in an industrial district.
There is a dog boarding place outside of Union, I believe, that's east of Old Mission, just south of Rosebush.
Bed and Biscuit,
What's that?
Bed and Biscuit on Baseline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
They still operate.
No, that's, yeah, I've used them, actually. I'm trying to compare this ordinance to what I see there. I was curious about the dog runs. It says dog runs should be incorporated within the building. I mean, obviously dogs have to go outside. When we say dog runs, are we talking about, is this saying here that dogs have to be all contained with indoors at all times? Is that what this is saying here?
I don't think we want it to be all indoors.
To me, with
I
it
don't.
incorporated with the building, I just look at that as, yeah, I mean, I don't take it as it has to be inside the building.
Well, it says within the building, not with the building.
I think we
Yeah.
should change
It's a
that
shell.
wording.
Right. I mean, I think, I agree, because it talks about screening, abundant screening, and I agree with that. But I think that, I think it would be overly restrictive to require that we keep dog runs entirely inside a building. So if it's not clear, I think we should change that language.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, keep it incorporated within the property lines.
Yeah.
I mean, something like that, I mean, shouldn't, I
Right.
mean, if this is the space that they're working out of, they're gonna do dog runs in here?
Well, it effectively prohibits creating a boarding,
Right.
a kennel.
And if you're next to residential, you have to be half a mile away.
Right.
I think that covers any noise or any issues.
Right.
Yeah.
And generally, if they're taking the dogs out, they're on leash, if they're taking them for walks or something.
So basically, just the thing I wanted to bring up too is, you know, as Brian even added on specifically with veterinarian offices, currently they're not allowed to offer that kind of service if they wanted to, unless they were located in an industrial zone. So is that something that maybe you'd want to consider looking
What
at?
about special use?
Well, no, as a special use,
Okay.
whether permitted or special. Just wanted to get your guys' feel for it,
I
and then
think
we
you
can
do it
give
as
Chris the
special
direction to
use.
maybe add some kind of language.
You're talking
around-
about like in a business district.
Yeah, business, office.
I would
district.
be comfortable looking at it as a special use within a business district.
Okay.
Me too.
Agreed.
Okay.
This is district.
Next, 6-9 bed and breakfast facility.
Just before you go to that, for 6-8, for kennels, I mean, I think the general assumption when you hear kennel is dogs, but if I remember correctly at the beginning, it really just refers to animals, but later in that, in G, it refers to dog waste. I'm wondering if you want to make it animal waste?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good
Animal
point.
runs, two above that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. 6-9 bed and breakfast facility. Anybody have anything with that?
Why would it have to be 10 years old at time of application? I mean, I don't frequent bed and breakfast, but I don't have no idea. If somebody built a brand new house and there's a bed and breakfast,
Yeah.
go
I
there.
don't see that.
I would say some people would build
Number-
it specific.
Number 6.
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
A6. Yep. Eligible structures.
That age discrimination?
I think we should take that out. I don't
Of the
know.
house.
Take it out, doesn't
Real
the
estate, yes.
state control
I
bed
have
and
no idea.
breakfast
Licensing.
licensing?
I,
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it should be
So we would-
restricted.
I don't see a compelling reason to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we've already got, as far as eligible structures, we already cite the room size, percent of floor area, spacing design. So
Well, one would
maybe
think-
Like the
age.
important things.
Yeah,
So
so
just
the
take
age of
6
the,
out.
you know,
One would think somebody might want to build the suit based on the other requirements.
Right.
So I think we're hearing take 6 out.
Take
Strike.
6.
strike out.
Strike
Yeah.
6.
Okay.
So, anything else with 6-9? (6-10) campgrounds, recreation grounds, private. 611 cemeteries, public or private, including mausoleums. 612 country clubs and golf courses. 613 daycare group home. We've already touched on that. Was there anything else in 6.13?
If we talk about country clubs and golf courses, we have a problem with figs being too close to the road. You can't put a sidewalk, all this stuff. Should we make a distance from thoroughfares or something like that?
You're back in 612.
Yeah.
From fairways, mean? So
Fairways,
fairways.
greens, we have this issue, we can't put a sidewalk down there because it's too close to the road. It's dangerous.
So
That's
the
true.
fairway should be
There
further.
should be some distance requirement.
Would we typically have an easement down the side of the road?
We have the
No.
right of way, public right of way, where the sidewalk's generally supposed to go. But when you put a fairway
Right there, and they
10
call
yards
it
off
safety.
the road,
So this is referring to new.
yeah, it would be
obviously.
new. I
Would
mean,
be
I
new.
don't
Yeah.
see a new
Stuff,
golf
yeah.
course
Yeah.
coming, but it
Yeah.
could, 50 years
Could
down
we-
the way, alleviate a problem.
Yeah, so this says 100 feet for all buildings, uses, and operations, right? So I assume that means the fairway would have to, and greens would have to be 100 feet back.
How far can you hit a golf ball?
What's that?
How far can you hit a golf ball?
Well, a lot farther than that, but especially if you hook it the right way.
I think the goal is to, not have the fairway within the right of way, right?
Right.
Or real close to it. That's the issue that Alex is talking about now.
Yeah.
Is we have a fairway that runs along a major thoroughfare. And we can't, the argument is you can't put sidewalks in there because
Someone
Not
will get
safe.
struck by the ball.
Can we, rather than having a set, an established linear feet, could we have a statement that simply says the fairways or greens should be designed to accommodate non-motorized traffic along roadways?
and motorized.
Well, and motorized and non-motorized roads and pathways, sidewalks,
Yeah, something to that effect.
something to that effect. So that way it has to be considered in the design if there's a new one.
Yeah, something about the golf balls being contained outside of the road or the right of way, just in general.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that. Even
yeah.
somehow containing golf balls.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, I can see people arguing that.
Do you feel comfortable with that, Chris?
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Let them argue, Mike.
So we had 6.13. What about 6.14 daycare family home? Instead of 7 to 12, it's 1 to 6. Short one sentence there, 2 sentences. One thing that's new, Chris added 6.15 drive-through facilities. Any?
Is an ATM considered a drive-through facility?
Mm-hmm.
It says
I think
drive-through
so.
facilities separate from the primary structure are prohibited.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have those.
We have quite a few of those.
Did we have in section 2, Chris, defining drive-through facility?
I can tell you. Facility designed to serve customers in their cars from a window in the building so that the cars are idled while they're being served rather than parked.
So it's not
ATM.
really, it is an ATM, okay.
I think so. Well, I guess it's not through a window in that case, right? Typically?
Typically.
Some of
No,
them are, but-
Just a car window.
I can make a note not including ATM.
Yeah.
Standalone ATM? Do we need to specify that? There's a lot of ATMs around the wall of a bank or
So,
what.
In their drive-through.
Oh, I got drive-up ATMs in the middle of a commercial parking lot.
Right, so standalone.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. 6.16 residential design requirements. It's also a new item.
Said all structures shall be attached to a foundation, yet for allowing single wide trailers, which typically aren't set on a foundation. I don't think you can set the frame on a foundation.
Well, this is
Right.
for residential structures on a individual lot, not within a mobile home park.
Right, well,
But, because also we can't restrict a mobile home being placed outside of a mobile home park. So if some,
So it could go on a vacant piece of
like
land.
somebody, single wide on in a non-mobile home park.
I guess it depends on what is considered a foundation.
right.
Well,
Well, to create a watertight seal under the exterior walls, it's going to be a pretty good foundation.
right.
But in this, under E, it actually is referring specifically to single-family detached dwellings. Is that, what, does a mobile home fall under that term, single-family detached dwelling?
Yes,
It does?
if
Has
it's
to, I
being
guess.
used on an individual lot, yeah.
I just don't know how you attach that to a foundation. It's,
Mobile home,
yeah,
they usually have to do tie down.
right, tie downs, but,
Yeah, remove the undercarriage,
right.
I mean the
It-
wheels and.
It does also qualify that as required by the building code, so the building code allow you to,
I guess some kind of leeway there.
Right, so I guess there is some, I mean, you do have to put piers and anchors and tie downs, but.
So yeah, that probably helped, because comma as required by the building code.
So,
So 6.17 dwellings, rooming and boarding.
I think this is out of your existing ordinance.
Yep. I remember in the past few years, we did have actually one application for this. The application was denied, but remember this was added in to the ordinance, I want to say 2012, 2013, because these kind of operations were discovered. And in the past, they had been granted variances, and then eventually the township decided to amend the ordinance and add this, and I think the only application that we had for it was actually denied, but,
they decide to add this because of safety concerns as far as like fire suppressant, making sure there's, like you would in an apartment complex. Is that the motivation, do you know, Peter?
to me, what I remember the motivation of adding it was they were found, and so then they would seek a variance, some were granted, some were not, but the township decided, well, this is happening, this is going on, we probably want to regulate it instead of just having the ZBA have to determine every time it's found or discovered.
So are they required inspections then?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're part of the rental program inspection.
That's what I was remembering, okay.
Yes. Number 3 on that, it says lot area. No rooming or boarding dwelling unit shall be approved on a lot that does not comply with the minimum lot area. Where do I find that? Where do I find the minimum lot area for this? That's what I couldn't find.
Back in the,
Was it section 4?
So do you wanna make mention that you go back to that section? So when somebody says, well, where's my minimum lot size?
table,
It
whatever.
refers them back to that
yeah, I
section.
can do that.
Can you hyperlink it?
Well, that's what we'll be doing, when the ordinance is complete, all the, sections will be hyperlinked. That would be in, section 3.
I think that would be good to add.
Me too.
Okay. 6.18 filling stations for the sale of gasoline, oil, etc.
What does et cetera mean?
Yeah,
Whatever, gas
Propane,
stations,
Diesel.
yeah.
Propane,
diesel,
Right.
yeah.
Diesel
so
fuel.
I'm wondering if instead of using the word et cetera, is that you try to explain. what-
Flammable substance.
Whatever definition, et cetera is really too, in my mind, doesn't really
Dot, dot,
provide
dot.
us guidance, but that's mine.
Yeah, well, I mean, because to bring up a point, I mean, you don't see a lot of them, but the new technology of plug-in electric cars.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask about, is charging stations.
Yeah.
Do we address that in section 1.8, or do we address that in a separate section, or what? Because maybe even before we redo our ordinance, charging stations may come to Mount Pleasant at some point. Well, we have some down in downtown Mount Pleasant.
I think I've seen one car plugged in there. Yeah. Doherty just put them in too. Up in Clare. Up in Clare. A whole bunch of them, yeah. Go figure.
Well, and I mean, so that's the thing, is it whether, how much they get used or not, it's something that, yeah, we probably want to
coming.
address a charging
they're coming.
station, yeah.
So add this.
So do we
And
say
that-
filling station / charging station?
Well, that's my question, is that I don't know, I mean, a charging station is electricity. It's not, we're not worried.
Fuel.
Yeah, we're not worried about spilling fuel. We're not, now cars are pulling up. There's issues with lights and traffic and stuff like that. So I don't know.
It could be.
I mean, do you got
Because
paid
they
to
have
use a
the fast
charging
charging.
station or no?
It
Say again?
depends a little bit on who you buy your car from at this point.
They have the fast charging stations now.
Yeah.
So the batteries you can fill up 10 minutes.
Right.
So, I mean, I could see cars pulling in, sitting there for 10 minutes.
Well, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
We will have issues of like maybe traffic, lights and stuff like that. We
Okay.
won't necessarily have pollutants that we would deal with.
Yeah.
I
Well, so
misunderstood.
basically what if I can give something, Chris, to take back from this is, some kind of inclusion of, charging stations for, electrical vehicles, the new technologies. And then maybe, cause right now it says setbacks, buildings shall be set back a minimum distance of 50 feet from any residentially zoned. So, if those are gonna have their own kind of setback, or just include, with any of the buildings.
And does this include also propane filling stations? Where you take a 20-pound cylinder or a truck that you fill with propane, or is that you, Joe?
No.
Is that what
Um,
et cetera means?
It could, yeah.
We've answered it.
So put it.
Yes, it
There we
does.
go. But we do have that same issue all over.
As we address the electric charging station, I would personally like to see if there's any language we could use for, I mean, it may, well, certainly in metropolitan areas, it's increasingly common to see businesses, not gas stations, but businesses providing their own charging stations. And do we need to address if a hotel or if some other business wants to have one or two charging stations out front? What does that look like too?
Well, because in the current ordinance, a filling station, so to your point, like a hotel would be allowed in a B5 zone, and a filling station is a special use in a B5 district. So-
Right.
I'm wondering if the charging station actually, that use should be addressed in the parking section of the ordinance,
Yeah.
because it really, doesn't have the same implications as a gas station.
No, and then we do see single charging units put out in front of a name of business. It truly has to do with, they're going to dedicate a spot for electric vehicles and give them a charging apparatus, so.
also add something in the parking section of the.
I think that's
Yeah.
probably the appropriate location.
Okay.
Moving on, 6.19 home occupations. I believe a lot of this is from the, when I was looking at it out of the current zoning ordinance. A question I did have is because I remember from our first, wasn't there two separate, there was a home occupation and then a home, another separate use that was, I believe
Yeah,
Chrissy said it was gonna be more intense, and I can't remember off the, because I didn't bring the other sections with me.
Is it a home-based business?
Yeah, well, maybe, I think
Right.
that was the term used, so I didn't know if we needed, was that just getting taken out, or did we actually wanna?
Well, we didn't address it in the, I don't think we addressed it in the list of uses, so I didn't put it in here. I guess we need to have that discussion whether you want something more intensive than a home occupation,
Okay.
where you would have employees as part of the home operation or.
What would you consider taxi service? Because, I mean, that's kind of exploded here over the last decade. Not Uber necessarily, but actual taxis, right? And you drive by some homes and you'll see like 6 taxis in there. I may be exaggerating a little bit. But a yard full of taxis, right? And they're usually run-down vehicles and
Are they inoperable?
I don't think so. But
They're on the
I know
road.
some people
Side.
work for them, and so someone stores them at their home, right? And the drivers come and get their taxi in the morning, and
Well, that,
would you consider it a home
I think
occupation
we-
or a home-based business?
Home-based business.
I would think so.
yeah, but you have to wonder whether that should be permitted or not.
I would agree. Are you aware of those, Peter?
Yeah, well, because I'm aware, there was one, where they were actually storing all the vehicles on their property. I got a complaint, I talked with the,
South of town?
off of Crawford Road.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yep. And so then I sent and this was a while ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. Contacted the owner, let him know that they were in violation, that they could apply for a home occupation permit to continue, whether it be approved or not. They didn't want to bother with approving it. They didn't think it would be approved. And so what they did do though is they moved outside of what they used, because the people that lived there, they used their own vehicle as part of the business. And so outside of what they actually used for their own use, what their employees used, those were removed. And where they're currently storing them, I'm not sure, but they're not being stored at their, residence anymore.
By definition, home-based business and home occupation is saying the same exact thing. So how do I know the difference
Well,
between
we,
And we talked
Uh,
about that too,
home-based
yeah.
business
Changed
versus home
that.
occupation? I don't understand. Oh,
we changed that.
okay, I'm sorry, I was looking at
Um,
definitions here.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not
last
sure
one.
I have that language here, but that was something that came up when we
Yep.
had the discussion about, I've revised it, but I don't have the language here.
Yeah.
That issue did come up.
And so for home-based business, Chris, were you looking for us to say that, yes, we would like a home-based business?
Yeah, I guess so. Do you want something more intensive than a home occupation? That's really what the question is.
Yeah. Because if not, then we'll just leave.
A home
Home
occupation, as you can see here, it is relatively low-key, doesn't have any employees. I think the signage is pretty minimal, if any. One non-illuminated nameplate. And the limitations on the total area of the home occupation are fairly limited. And a home-based business is something that, where you would be allowed to have 1 or 2 employees. You might be allowed a larger sign, something of that nature.
I think we need something on
We need
home
some-
base.
just- Yeah.
I think so too.
So the,
Okay,
so yeah, I mean, what I get from it is just like a home occupation, a home-based business would still then require, it would be a special use, public hearing, all that.
right,
It would just be something that we could consider as more intense than.
right.
Okay.
Do we have a zoning official?
I would be the zoning official.
You would be, okay.
Mhm.
I was just, it said zoning official, I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know we had one.
Strike that, put
Put
You're one and the same. Okay,
Would,
got it.
would be or are?
R, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's, moving on. 6.2, hunting clubs and gun clubs. Anything with that?
Hunting club, what is that?
Like a fenced-in club?
200 feet from a residential dwelling?
I don't like the idea, although it doesn't really explain here, I don't like the idea of a gun club, like, regular shooting within 200 feet of a existing dwelling. And I
Is that
think,
what's
I
out
think,
there on Wen Road there?
I think that.
Yes, that's a gun club.
Off
This
Wynn,
is
that's a
another
gun
one.
club.
So that'd be a gun club.
That's on Millbrook.
Sportsman's
Yeah,
club.
Millbrook, oh yeah.
It's a
That
gun
seems a
club.
little awkward
Right.
to have within
Sportsman's
200
club.
feet.
Well, considering the fact that I think state law says that you have to be 400 feet from a house to hunt from a residence.
Right.
I don't know why, I mean, I'm assuming that a hunting club, because it's, I don't know if a hunting club even has to be fenced, to be honest, so.
I think they
it-
fenced it to keep the animals in.
They fence it to keep the animals in, but I think that multiple owners can come together and own something that they call a hunt club.
bullets can fly miles.
Can we look that up to see what the state requirement
Is
is?
it noise?
Yeah, I can
Is
look
it
that up.
Safety, is
All
it?
of the above.
I mean,
'Cause
Union
it should-
Township is
yeah, it definitely should be more.
increasingly growing. The idea of somebody being able to put in a gun club within 200 foot of residential dwelling is, that even 1,500 feet is, I mean, you're shooting pistols and shotguns, and a rifle is gonna crack all the way across the township, let alone.
Okay, so junkyards. Anything with 6.21?
Mm.
6.22 marijuana-related facilities, we already know that.
No, we're gonna strike that, right? So then therefore there'll be
Yeah.
a renumbering?
No, we're not gonna strike it. We have to specifically say that the township is
Opted
Okay,
out.
fine.
Not allowed yet.
Okay.
opting out.
Okay.
Okay. 6.23 miniature golf and driving ranges. Do we want to have, I guess, some kind of language of, same thing with golf courses? I mean, I understand it's a miniature
Well,
golf
they do.
driving.
They have safety screening under this one. In terms of the driving ranges.
Yeah,
But that's typically they go away from the road.
Correct.
yeah.
So it's not like the fairway where it might go parallel.
No, but at least it's addressing in general. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not saying which
Right.
direction it has to go, but they're just saying it needs safety screening as deemed reasonable. I mean, I don't think we need it for a miniature golf. Yeah.
So 6.24 mixed-use structure.
My question with that is that these are for single-family units.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, if they in fact, I believe the ones on Mission, are they also not are they single family or are they also for students? So you're saying that these mixed, that an individual can't do it and they can be for student rentals?
No,
as well?
well, and that's going with the definition of a family, and I know we talked about that, at our last meeting.
I don't see that means traditional or functional, at least I didn't
Yeah.
think it meant so therefore, only that by that definition of family, so that means somebody can't come in, a developer and you know, do the mixed underneath the retail and have student housing up above.
No, they could, they just, because was it
No.
the family, I believe, if it's no more than
2 unrelated?
2 unrelated or 3 unrelated, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
In regards to traditional versus functional?
Whether it's it doesn't matter whether the
Basically, what it would be saying is that if it's student housing, you can't have more than 2 unrelated in
Right.
yeah.
So I can't have a 4. In other words, I can't do it and I can't have 4 students in there.
I want to say it's 3.
Not in one
Yeah,
unit.
and
Not in the
traditional
same-
family is an individual
Mm-hmm.
or a group of 2 or more persons related by blood. So how is a student, 2 students related, I mean, I guess a brother and sister?
I would tend to agree with-
Developer end up
I'm just,
What was that?
Well, you have,
Mixed
use structure
the
thing.
definition of family has 2 definitions. The traditional family,
Right.
which is the one that is related by blood, marriage, or adoption,
right,
together with foster children and domestic employees of the principal occupants. And then there's the functional family, a collective number of individuals domiciled in one dwelling whose relationship is of a permanent and distinct domestic character with a demonstrable and recognizable bond characteristic of a cohesive unit, and who are in fact cooking and living as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit. And then it goes on to say a functional unit does not include fraternities or sorority or things of that nature. A group of individuals whose domestic relationship is transitory, temporary, or resort seasonal in nature. And any group of individuals whose association is essentially for convenience or economics or for limited duration of their education, training, or a similar determinate period of time.
So
therefore, I'm saying that
we're disallowing student use.
you're disallowing student rentals in this mixed use, is what you're saying. And I am saying, why are we
Why?
doing that?
I agree. Why are we doing that?
That's my question.
I think most logical places for this be on our major corridors. Not sure why we should restrict it either.
And so again, like I said, I don't have the sections 1 through 5. I only brought 6 through 10 with me, but in our current zoning ordinance, it defines family as no such family shall contain more than 3 unrelated persons, more than 3, so you can have up to 3 that are unrelated. In our new definitions, has that been restricted, or is that not even included?
No, but Peter, what he just read was this part. A functional family will not include this, so that means it takes out the students, the functional family, so that takes that out. The traditional family, foster will not have more than 3 additional unrelated persons, but again, you're really talking about 2 related blood. It's by family. They're
Right.
related in some ways by blood. Marriage or adoption.
I don't know why we would restrict our
So-
mixed-use units to just,
Yeah, no, I would
Single
be in
family.
favor, yeah.
So by putting the word single family, I think that
Let's change it.
let's change
Why
it.
don't we
make it-
just say 4 residential units may be
Perfect.
located in the
Yes.
structure?
I'm also curious as to why we would, and maybe there's a reason, why are we restricting each residential unit to a minimum gross floor area of 1,000 square feet? I mean, if somebody wants to do a 1-bedroom apartment above a mixed use, it has to be a 1,000 square foot 1-bedroom apartment? What's that?
That's awfully big.
Well, that's what I mean. A typical 2-bedroom unit would be around 750 to 800 square feet for a 2-bedroom, so
single person or a couple could do 500 square feet. Be a small studio, but might be what they can afford and want,
In Japan, that's a family of four.
right?
What's the city doing with this? Because this is the only place that I've seen on Mission, right? That, the mixed,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that Chipotle, we have
Yes,
that, we
that's-
manage that property, and,
Downtown.
I mean, there's, you don't have to be related to be there.
no, that's correct, but what is it they're saying in regards to square foot and so forth?
Size of the units.
Oh,
Size
that
of
I don't know,
units
those
and
are
so forth.
2,000
So
square
what is
feet,
the
so
city-
Oh.
they're
Big ones.
4-bedroom, 4.5 bathrooms. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're stainless steel appliances, granite countertops.
There's one
Mm.
up by, Taco Bell.
I'd live there. It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, we still have stuff.
I mean, there may be a good rationale for it, but it seems,
600 square feet maybe would be a
Yeah.
better number.
I think 600 square feet is reasonable, yeah.
Do we need to
And no,
define
nobody's
that?
gonna build anything smaller, wanna build anything smaller than that if there's no market for it anyway, right? I
Do
mean,
we need to define the size?
Well, we're restricting the number of units, so the number of units is up to 4 units. So, I mean, I guess if basically whatever floor space you're using on I mean, of course it doesn't, you can go up however many levels you want, but you know, if it's somehow tied to the square footage of the business below, then are we somehow inadvertently restricting the size of the units that they can make above it? But you could put 2 units on a second floor and 2 units on a third floor too, right? Is that restricted?
No.
No.
As
So,
long as we meet the height.
yeah,
right?
And they have enough parking,
then they have enough parking.
because it does say something about, so that limits in regards to how many units you can have as well.
Yeah, so why limit that either?
Well, so was it in 6.24, you have A through G. E, it says number of occupants per unit. For the purposes of determining the maximum number of occupants per unit, the occupants must satisfy the definition of family.
So we're gonna have to change that.
Yeah, well,
I suggest we strike that.
I would think we strike that, and I think that if we include a minimum gross square footage, that what we're doing is essentially mandating the size, how small of the business can be. It's gonna be a minimum size of the business too. So I would strike the square footage and the number of occupants per unit, and let the size of the development dictate that.
How about broadening the number of units?
Broadening it to more than 4?
If you had a larger store, let's say.
Well, I guess it all depends on, you know, if it's attached. If you have a 50,000 square foot facility, but is 3 different storefronts underneath, you could potentially have any number of dwellings above it. I don't know if there's a benchmark or if there is a best practice for mixed use, which is why some of these are being proposed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if
And
there
mixed
is,
use certainly is something that's encouraged these days, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Now, I imagine that somebody must have had a project or something in mind when these regulations were adopted, that
Mm-hmm.
were the source of these regulations.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
What's typical for you to see?
Pardon?
What is typical for you to see with regards to this?
Well, 1,000 square feet is pretty large, actually, for a facility, for a mixed-use facility.
How about number of units?
Normally, I don't think that's regulated.
So, as I read it again, the residential units, it says, the way we have it written here is up to 4 single-family units, we'll strike single-family, which shall all be on the second floor. So this is essentially mandating a 4,000 square foot business, the way it's currently written.
There is an exception, if it's single story, then you can have one, well, that's only for legal non-conforming structures though,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, if it's illegal, yeah. So it'd have to be already in existence, it couldn't be brand new. So I guess, the direction to Chris is to just kind of take a whole look at section 6.24, and you've got the notes of the striking from family and minimum requirements, units, so on and so forth.
Does the parking, again, looking at parking, 2 additional spaces shall be provided per residential unit. Keep that?
I think so.
Okay,
Mhm.
just checking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So 6.25 mobile and modular home sales. Oh. 6.26 mortuary establishments, funeral homes. Okay. 6.27 multiple family dwellings of 5 or more units. Six point two eight natural resource extraction operations. Six point two nine nursing home, convalescent home, extended care facility, assisted living facility. Six point three oil and gas drilling and processing.
I got a question on this. You know, since the Act of 2006, I've been in a lot of township meetings across the state, reading the planning commission, what is it, the MAP magazine we get. One way that, one problem that communities have had with this is because the state's taken all this ability to regulate drilling in our communities away from us, is you can have a well put right behind your home.
Right.
And one way that I've seen communities be creative in how they can do this is say, oh, well, if you're gonna be by a residence, we wanna restrict the hours of operations, because that's reasonable. We don't want you, trucks coming and going at 2 AM when you're near a residential district. And so, is there a way that we can do something very similar, and maybe it's there and I just missed it? My big concern is near residents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not as much business or commercial districts, but.
No, we don't regulate hours of operation here.
And since it's a special use, can we put something in there that specifically that maybe says planning commission may dictate hours of operation, if near residential?
Which part of the operation are you going to, do you want to regulate? I think that's the key, like the actual drilling, I don't think you can regulate.
Yeah, and I
that.
don't think, I'm not talking about the drilling, typically, at least what I've seen with other communities is,
Talking about the extraction.
vehicles coming on and off, right, the extraction process, it's the noise of the trucking, right?
Okay,
And so if you restrict that during more normal wake hours, and I'm, again, only worried about near residential or a dwelling.
So it says it shall comply with noise standards set forth in section 8.1.
But would you consider traffic coming on
Yeah,
8.1?
I haven't scrolled all the way up to 8.1 yet.
They do talk about locking the facility during the daytime, or except during the daytime hours, so I guess you could unlock it during night too, but.
Yeah. The only reason I'm bringing this up is I've seen other communities try to do this, and my only concern again was if we felt it necessary, we'd have some room to control activity on strange hours near residences.
okay,
Is it, you
let me
think I'm
look at
crazy?
that.
Is this reasonable?
No, you're probably right on.
I just know if it was in my backyard, I wouldn't want it at 2 AM. traffic.
Right. I can understand
I mean, it just restricts them for the glare and the heat, but it doesn't really say anything about time in that. If you're looking for 8.1.
Do we have any proven oil reserves underneath Union Township anyways? I mean, I guess it's more than
Yeah.
oil, isn't it?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
Down out on,
we have fracking wells in our township.
and didn't they open a well, back up on Remus?
Oh,
And
it's gas
over
drilling
here
too.
in that drinking aquifer, right, what is it, 1,000 feet from the chip?
That's natural gas?
North of-
That's natural gas?
The fracking, it's an injection well.
Oh,
It's drilling, right? It's an injection well for fracking waste.
yeah.
And the idea is.
I
that
do
the-
remember them, yeah. Yeah, I do remember that.
And I could see more waste wells being put in our township.
Yeah.
And those would have trucks coming and delivering the waste, right? You don't wanna do it at 2 AM if it's next to a house.
Right. That makes sense.
No.
So, there's not anything else. Section 6.31 outdoor storage.
I had one quick question, on A, it says all outdoor storage shall be enclosed by solid wood or vinyl fence or a wall. Is that defined somehow? Wall? I didn't know what that
that.
meant.
Yeah, there's a section, that will deal with that. And that is in,
7.6.
Opaque screen and carrying out the requirements.
yeah.
So that's what you intended there, right? Or is that what our current ordinance says?
I think this is a new section, is it not? Yeah,
Because obviously there are new materials, and we've had some come before us that were, what was that one we had with the Holiday Inn they were proposing?
Yeah, they had a.
Oh, yeah, the new type of, material they used, it was,
Or whatever it is, it would satisfy the wall definition, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So outdoor storage is storage of anything that you're selling, or storage of anything that, are we talking about black dirt piles, are we talking, how's that utilized? Landscaping materials?
Actually, this is in section 8.23. Let me see how it's addressed in there.
So in the current zoning ordinance, it states outdoor storage and waste disposal, all outdoor storage facilities shall be enclosed by a fence or wall adequate to conceal such facilities from adjacent property. Again, this is in section 8 of our current zoning ordinance, which is general ordinances, so it'd be applicable in all districts. All materials or waste that might cause fumes, odors, or dust, or that constitute a fire hazard, or that may be edible by rodents, insects, shall be stored outdoors, only in closed containers and screened from the street or adjacent property. B, no material or waste shall be deposited on the premises in such form or manner that may be moved off the premises by natural causes or force. Waste materials shall not be allowed to accumulate on the premises in such manner as to be unsightly, constitute a fire hazard, or contribute to unsanitary conditions. All outdoor storage facilities for fuel, raw materials, and products for every use is enumerated in limited, herein located less than 100 feet from any other district shall be enclosed by a solid fence or wall, no less than 6 nor than 10 feet in height. And that's it.
Yeah, so we pretty much follow, what's in section 8.23 here in the new section 6.31. So I guess it deals with pretty much all outdoor storage.
I guess the only difference is in the current zoning, it speaks to outdoor storage and waste disposal, and this one is just titled outdoor storage.
We have another section that deals with waste disposal.
Okay.
May I, by definition, it says outdoor storage, and make sure that I understand what we're doing here. It says, the keeping in an unroofed area of any goods, junk, material, merchandise, or vehicles in the same place for more than 24 hours. So I can put, however we say junk, as long as it doesn't go above the fence. I can put any junk in there. That's what I mean by definition. And the here says I can't go above whatever that fence, so I can put whatever
Right.
junk. However we decide.
Yep, as long
For
as
no
nobody
more
can
than-
see
I
your
just,
junk, it
I
doesn't
just
matter.
like, okay, that's an interesting terminology.
But for no more than 24 hours.
No, for more than 24 hours.
Oh, more, okay, sorry.
So I was just. Junk. And does this require, then, as long as I'm behind the fence, I can't say that this is Blythe.
Well, because
Is that true?
Well, I mean, then if you have we have the definition of a junkyard, and so, yeah.
I'm going to suggest we take the word junk out of that definition.
And I can put vehicles in there, in the same place for more than 24 hours. So that outdoor storage, I can put vehicles, as long as it doesn't go beyond above my fence.
And you're looking back in the definitions?
It's back in the
Yeah.
definitions. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we used to, with outdoor storage, we used to just talk about screening. We didn't always say there's gonna be a fence.
Yeah, I think that,
We
I think our,
We
you
typically,
mean our existing ordinance?
well, I'm saying when we're talking about outdoor storage or doing a special use permit, we're always talking about screening. Trying to get the green in there and all that. We didn't say you have to have a fence for outdoor storage.
We do for material storage, don't we?
For storage, outdoor storage.
Oh, I guess it would be storage that would be intended for retail sale, wouldn't it? If I wanted to sell landscaping materials, I could keep that stored behind a wall, correct?
right.
That's how I'm reading that.
Right.
And so, but we've never really enforced that.
I remember seeing it with a 6-foot fence or wall to separate it, but I don't remember.
Always. Half
Yeah.
they're selling what you see in their yard, right? Same with when they're selling gravel. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just
And
saying, are we
fencing.
restricting people? Are we?
Well-
Is this wording saying you will put a fence up to a certain height, not to exceed 10 feet, that's gonna hide everything you're selling in your yard?
But this isn't just geared towards retail sales either. So if I keep 3 cords of wood out in my front yard because I burn wood, I've got to enclose it, correct?
It's vague enough that you could read that. Somebody could argue that.
I think if it's for retail sales, I think it should be enclosed, and I've got no problem requiring that type of enclosure.
Really?
What type of enclosure?
The fence that hides it?
Well,
per wall.
For retail
All your
sales.
landscaping stuff over here on M20, that's enclosed,
It's enclosed.
correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not by a fence, but it's
Three
like,
sides.
yeah,
Right.
Each material is separated by a wall.
yeah, whether
Right.
it's brown or red or black mulch.
And Allwood
I could
separates
argue
theirs by a
this-
wall.
How
This
can you
says you must
see it?
contain it on all
Huh?
four sides.
How can you see it
Which may be
if it's
restricted,
hidden by
but-
a wall?
Right.
Well, I drive through the property.
If you didn't drive through the property, you could still see it, so.
Well, if you're on M20, because there's
Does
not
it
a lot
have
of
four
trees there, you
sides?
could look back there if you're driving, but then
To
you're in
jump into
violation, just keep driving on the
7.6.
road. I mean,
So what are you suggesting, Ryan?
I guess this is kind of perfect, because that's why I think it's maybe too restrictive, or how do we read this section?
Well,
Well, I think first of all, it probably should say outdoor storage in non-residential districts.
yeah.
But
Right.
we're not going to fully require 4 sides of enclosure on a material that you're trying to sell to the public.
Because
Do we want
It's
to?
not
Intent
that
is to
unusual.
make it look neat and not
But-
a mess, right?
But if you look, okay, so we have, multiple landscaping businesses within Union Township. And if we're telling them they have to enclose their yards because they have plants out there that they're selling,
Well, I think we have, in fact, it's the very next thing, we have outdoor temporary retail sales,
define temporary.
permitted for a duration of not more than 90 days in any 12-month period.
Yeah, these are full-time businesses. So that would be outside storage, correct?
Yeah, but the two you're thinking of, Allwoods and Green Scene, any year-round storage, they're planted in the ground. Their trees are in the ground.
Does that matter?
Well, it's
They're
by virtue
storing
of
it.
that, it's screening.
They're storing.
I mean, it's a tree.
It's a farm. It's a tree farm.
Okay.
I just,
I'm just
your point is
saying,
taken.
my-
I get it.
Yeah.
Are we
But
looking at two different sections or something?
the one
'Cause I'm
question
looking
I
at
have is.
storage, and then
yeah.
the next one, there's outdoor temporary retail
Well,
sales.
Yeah,
jumped
we
in.
haven't
So
gotten
you're
to
like
the, yeah, we haven't gotten to six
Bouncing
point
back
three
and
two
forth
yet.
or something.
But the one
Outdoor
question I
storage.
had is, it was mentioned
Okay,
where,
we're not selling it, we're
where does
storing
it say it has to be stored on all 4 sides? Where do we get that from?
It doesn't say that, but it implies that, the way I interpret it.
Shall be
I
enclosed.
don't see it,
Shall be enclosed.
I wouldn't interpret it that way. When you said that 4 sides, I'm like, where does it say that?
Enclosed.
It doesn't
Alex
say-
just said
Yeah.
enclosed, to me, means it's enclosed.
You don't like the word enclosed, okay. I see what you're saying.
I'm not
Say-
opposed to it,
No, I-
I saw that
I
it
get
has
it.
potential to be too restrictive in some cases.
well, couldn't we just
Other
simply
cases we
say
want.
it must be enclosed by at least 3 sides? At least means they can leave it at 3 sides. Or if they want to put, like, at CMU, for instance, there are several locations where they have recycling dumpsters and they enclose them all on all 4
Yeah.
sides, and it's a big swinging gate.
I think I think it can be just changed, because, so for like a B5 district, in our current zoning, the way we have it worded, it says all outdoor storage shall be in the rear yard and shall be completely screened with an obscuring wall. So, I mean, do we just want to, instead of saying enclosed, just say screened, completely screened?
Screened with.
Or do we?
I don't want to
each
go
zone-
less than the 3 walls that we require for retail sales right now.
We're
I'm
not in the
favor of
retail
that.
sales, we're in the storage section.
No,
Yeah.
I understand that. Chris has already suggested that we restrict this to non-residential, so that
Right.
does make it a business storage, whether it's being sold or whether it's being stored on site for its use. We're talking about a business use now. We're not talking about residential. So,
And I mean, this isn't necessarily a retail product though, right?
it doesn't have to be a retail product, but if we're talking about outdoor storage, I think we have to accommodate retail sales as well as the storage materials that would be used. I mean, why else
Couldn't I
is a
argue
business?
on displaying it though versus storing it? Like in the case of McGurk's where they have the bins, right? I wouldn't want those enclosed on 4 sides,
I'm not,
but those are kind of display, right? You go out and look at the,
People
I'm
go
not
out and take
suggesting,
samples.
right?
I'm not suggesting that we close off with a 4th wall for those. What I'm saying is, I don't think we should take away the 3 walls and just say, now it just has to be screened. Because screening becomes very, I put in a few 6-foot spruces, and it takes 10, 15 years for them to actually be screened, and then the trees have to live to screen it.
Right, bulk bins would have to be concrete, because you would just knock them over. And that's
Right.
why everybody makes them out of concrete.
Right.
And I would say that if it's business storage, it should be enclosed fully. If it's a display product, you could argue that it can be out. I'm not storing this, it's out for sale.
So are you making the argument then that mulch should be left out open without any?
I'm just saying, I almost wouldn't consider that storage, cause it is a product, you're not like warehousing something, right? You bought it for retail sale.
Automobiles display their vehicles, people sell
And a
mulch,
lot.
display their mulch.
I agree with
So I would
that.
say-
I think
so yeah, I would
retail
say-
sales,
Would be
Does
exempt
not.
from this.
yes, I agree with that.
And therefore, if we say it's exempt, because it's a retail product that's there to be sold, they do need to sometimes have long-term storage of something, that should be enclosed.
Can I bring a point up that's not in our Union Township, but look at Pete's down here. He's very neat and orderly, but he has some of his cars that he brings in for parts lined up across the east side of his building. It's nice, neat, everything, but we know that he's using it for parts.
But they're also in the parking lot. too.
So how would that fit? Would we, because it's not for retail sales,
Right.
would we make Pete or strike Pete, but in that scenario, would we make that person put it in a fence because it's a junkyard? No. And that's where, so because of all this discussion, if we went with this, we'd have an ordinance that we would be struggling interpreting it as long as with the people that are coming to us going, define this for me. So that's why I'm worried that this is way too vague and not easily applicable in our scenario.
Storage except for retail sales.
Yeah, I agree with the retail sales shouldn't be held to enclosed.
Do we have some sort of, for our landscaping, for our ordinance that covers landscaping facilities, is it somehow defined in there how they store their outdoor products? What if I
Not
s-
in the landscaping section.
So if I sell manure, fertilizer, manure, I can keep that in a big pile next to my building? Not enclosed?
Allwoods has it right in their yard.
Yeah,
It's
they
in a
sell
bag.
Dairy Do, which is a
So-
manure
It's
topsoil
enclosed.
blend.
It's enclosed,
It's
covered in a
in
roof,
a-
it's in a bag.
No,
Right.
it's a bulk product, Dairy Do.
No, I'm familiar with Dairy Do. Are they
Right.
selling it, where they, every time I bought it, it's under a roofed, under a roofed small structure in bags.
But not to meet this. It's still storage, retail storage.
I guess my concern is the storage of raw material, not product, raw material for sale. Because that can become a nuisance, because nothing dictates then the size of the pile of that raw material.
So pallets of wood chips at a gas station. Is that a raw material to you, or is that?
Pipe at Michigan Pipe and Valve.
And there's a lot of scenarios which I think it's retail sales, right? It's not necessarily raw material. Raw material I look at as piles of aggregate for the cement plant that we can see, and good luck building a fence to hide that. But that's raw material,
But that,
something used.
that's not for retail sale, is it?
I bought that, it's a raw material for retail sale. Again, it's our point, it's arguable, right?
I think this is an area that we're gonna have to.
I mean, outdoor
further
storage, we have to
discussion.
specify what you're storing outside or something, because it could be a car stored outside in my front yard.
I mean,
Yeah, okay, I
we
get your
just
point.
argued that we can leave 3 inoperable cars.
So that, yeah,
two-
that's what I'm
two
saying.
yards,
Two inoperable cars,
But
side
now
on the
we're-
side.
now we're
Side or
arguing you
rear,
can be
so
able
not
to
in the
store
front,
anything else
not
you
in
want
the front.
outside, and it doesn't matter. So I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me.
So this one's definitely one we gotta work on.
So I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, retail, retail
that,
sales, it's easy.
so I guess I think maybe just from, this just, I guess my advice that I'd give Chris is, instead of having a specific section about outdoor storage, maybe just integrating outdoor storage
Into the
specifically to
zones.
uses in different districts instead of a
Yeah, I wouldn't
one
have a
size
second
fits
one.
all.
That's a good idea.
That is good, because we're used to handling it that way, right?
Yeah. So maybe just consider, if we can't word this better, maybe just consider striking 6.31 outdoor storage.
Uh-oh.
Or not. I'm not-
I'm not ready to do that yet.
Or better define
Yeah.
it.
Better define it,
define
yes.
it.
Maybe we have a
Yes.
better definition of outdoor storage, so that we're
Yeah, I
all on
think
the
that's
same
probably the
page.
solution.
Okay.
I mean, of what
I
kind
know,
of
I-
material or, yeah.
I don't remember what section it's in now. I think it was talking about some of the larger residential developments and stuff, but we're proposing in here that we're requiring landscaping now, for those types
what?
of developments, but we're talking about having, as long as it qualifies under retail sales, we're talking about just being able to leave product anywhere you want within eyeshot of potential residential districts, or just community beautification. I mean, does it look nice to have it just sitting out? And I don't know, but we're not gonna get through this all tonight anyway, so.
Yeah. Outdoor storage of what is pretty much what we need to know, right?
So moving on, this is something new that we don't have in our current zoning ordinance, outdoor temporary retail sales, 6.32.
This is for the tent sale at Art Van or something? Is that what we're doing?
Let's say in section 2, did we have defined outdoor temporary retail sales?
No.
No?
You have temporary use of, or building defined, but not temporary,
Outdoor retail
outdoor
sales.
temporary. I don't see that unless I've missed it.
Well, this would be like, when Walmart has their bedding plants outside in their parking lot for 90 days. Or something of that nature.
Harbor Freight does their,
Flag lady at,
Or-
Isabella and.
I guess,
So it would be like Art Van when they do their tent sale.
right.
Kind of like sales
Yeah, that would
outdoor.
be another example.
I mean, does the outdoor food and beverage thing, is that like a food truck or something?
That's what I was thinking.
Right,
So that would fall under
Is it-
this as well?
yes,
Okay.
under item D.
Who approves those permits? In Township?
For a
For a place
food
to
truck?
pull their, whatever vehicle.
We don't have anything right now. We don't
So
regulate it.
People just have to ask the owner if they can.
Yeah. I think something with the Central Michigan Health District.
Yeah, it says that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Outdoor food and beverages services are subject to approval by the health
I would
department.
assume that's in terms of getting your license, not in terms of where you stop and sell food.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of, these kind of food trucks and these businesses, it's came up, it's something that happens, but we don't currently have anything to regulate them or prohibit them or anything.
Some communities go in depth in regulating those sorts of things, and the approach we took here is to be more permissive.
I
What
would
do you
agree
mean
with
by-
that.
If it becomes a huge problem, we'll try to address it.
I know in Traverse City, they've tried to tamp down on it because the argument from the brick and mortar institutions is they're bearing a bigger burden of cost in terms of the investment required to open up a restaurant or an eatery, and that they're losing business because of lax permitting. So I know Traverse City has addressed it, but we're not there.
Well, at the very least, this restricts it to 90 days and 12-month period, so, right?
In one site, I would guess.
That's true. A food truck could.
Yeah, food truck can go anywhere they want, all year round.
Spaces over and.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Los Jalapenos food truck, I mean, he only came here once or twice a week. He'd go out to Isabella Road, he was doing it in the city at Family Video, but then they hammered him on the permit, so he said, well, I'm going to the township. So he just had to get permission from the property owner, which he did. So, and he went to various locations, but I mean,
Until
he was
we
never
started,
in one spot for
Right.
like, more than a couple of, one day, and then he'd be back maybe a
Yeah.
couple days later, cause he'd go to Clay or Ithaca.
until we started hearing complaints from local business or residents, I would say err on the more permissive side.
What do you mean by private sidewalk? Where would I find a private sidewalk? Do we have private sidewalks?
As opposed to a public sidewalk.
Yeah, but
It's
where,
in the
where would I
right of
find
way.
that? Where would I find a private?
Outside the right of way?
Yeah, but where, give me, can
In
you?
a parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
To lead
Or
up to the
like
building.
Like the strip malls have sidewalks you walk on in front of the stores.
But that's not a, that's public, isn't
It's
it?
private.
It's private.
Okay.
That's why the police don't come to the parking lot to issue a ticket, do you?
It's owned by the,
Yeah, cause that
Owner of
sidewalk's
the property,
located on
right?
their property. It's
Right.
not located in the right of way.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, 6.33 planned shopping centers.
Is this new to the ordinance?
No, we have
No.
shopping centers in as a special use.
I was surprised with the market analysis. I don't remember reading that anywhere else, but.
Need to be a bigger stickler on provide safe and convenient access on Core Drive.
Dang it.
He's right.
I agree.
It is awful.
Can't argue with him. Yeah, I mean, Chris's market analysis, is that pretty typical when you're talking about getting approval? I mean, I've never seen that before.
With larger developments, it is. I'm not sure what was thought about with the planned shopping center. Do we have a definition?
I mean, when you say larger, you talking like 50,000 square feet, 100,000 square feet, or 10,000 square feet?
No, it would be 100,000 or more.
Okay.
I doubt we're gonna see a ton of those opening up anytime soon.
Yeah.
So should that be specified in there?
Probably would be a good idea. We don't have a definition of planned shopping center. But,
One thing that kind of, sparked my, when I saw planned shopping centers, because it's come an issue not necessarily with planned shopping centers, but, and I guess this, not necessarily the section, but I just wanted to put it out there. I think we've talked about it before, is, like the issue on Bluegrass Road, requiring any kind of cross, access, between the parcels, off of the main road. If we wanted to look at making that required in certain districts or with more certain uses.
So requiring access management?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
kind of
what
an
you're
access management thing. It's came up before and we don't have a lot.
yeah, we deal with that in the parking
9.
section. We have an
Okay.
access management
Yep.
section in
Okay.
there.
Okay,
Is that section 14.2?
that's section, what? Jen?
9.
9?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's a good idea, though.
And 9.7,
Okay.
I believe.
Oh, okay, section 9, okay.
Okay, so 6.34, public and institutional uses.
I just have one question related to our previous meeting. We decided to make these must be an SUP, right? Public and institutional use?
Yeah.
Okay. There is, it's not permitted without anywhere currently.
Well, 'cause I was gonna say, section 6, Chris, it's called standards applicable to specific land uses. Because all of these have seemed to be special uses. That more of what specific land uses is referring to, is that these are special uses?
Not necessarily, some of them are not.
Okay.
It's just where there are special standards that are applicable,
Specific,
but I
okay.
think that most of them are special land uses.
Okay.
You'd have to go to the table
Yeah.
in section 3.
Because I think that's one of the things you were gonna change from our, I just wanted to make sure we had that change was, per our last meeting, if I remember correctly, we were gonna make public institutional uses, right, government buildings or something like that. All of those special use that we have latitude. And that was largely because, if it's a public service, the zoning would kind of allow it to be anywhere, but we wanted the ability to say, well, you can't have, it's a good example. You can't have the road commission in the middle of a neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, to define, separate different kinds of government
Right.
uses, yeah. Okay, 6.35, public or group organization buildings. Six point 36, racetracks.
We got two, right?
Racetracks?
Horse and vehicle, right? Are they both in the township?
School racetracks.
Horses are still running.
I don't think horses run
I don't
anymore, do
think the
they?
horses are running anymore. They might be off track, but I don't think the
Okay.
horses are running.
Well, it could still a track there, right?
Well,
I was just proud that we had two. Let me have that, okay?
It's all yours.
Okay, 6.37, second living quarters on a farm.
Is there any way to regulate noise decibel and racetracks?
We do have a police powers regular ordinance that regulates racetracks as far as the, I think it's in our noise and nuisance ordinance. I don't believe it speaks to a decibel level though.
Because I can hear him, I live this way and I can hear
Mhm.
the racetrack. You too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I know what time it is.
Yeah, you're on the edge of the township.
Right. I'm on the far edge of the
Right.
township. I stay here.
So you can hear him in Deerfield then.
Now, so this is the zoning ordinance, so any kind of change here wouldn't affect any
Correct.
existing.
Right.
Existing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would hate for another one to come up.
But I believe, well, it doesn't say it here in this section. I know in our current zoning ordinance, I think it's restricted only as a special use in an ag district.
Okay.
The current racetrack we have is zoned industrial. Okay, section 6.37, second living quarters on a farm.
Is that the doghouse?
6.38, self-storage buildings. I know we've taken a lot of requests for this in the township, and so looking at this looks very similar to what we currently have.
So the very first sentence, Chris, use for item A, special land use and site plan approval required. Should that be right at the top of 634 then? Just repeat that same,
I could do that.
just,
Okay, yeah, kind of repeat that for
Yeah.
each one that actually is a special use.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing to repeat.
the only thing my comment with self-storage is, I understand that what we did at McGurk, and we have this private road that is between the residents. I find that kind of interesting that we still don't see that that's butting up against a residential area. cares about the road, it's still a residential area right there, and I can't believe that we say that the reason why we don't have the screening is because we have this road,
Private road.
yeah, a private road, and so then therefore, it doesn't matter. You still have lights, you still have noise, you still have dust, and you still have residents. I really struggle with that, so I don't know whether so that we don't run into that same issue in the future.
I've had the same thought, Denise.
Right, I don't think it's a mini storage issue.
No,
I think
it's a
a
general-
site plan
right, yeah.
review
Yeah.
issue.
Okay,
And just because you put a private drive along the edge doesn't mean you shouldn't follow screening requirements still.
correct. So I don't know, so we wouldn't have to put it here. Because again, it talks about screening. So we have D, is that, do we understand that this is butting up, whether you put a private road in there or not, between the two parcels, you're still next to a residential
Can I
zone.
draw, anybody mind if I draw this for Chris so he gets, what we're, 'cause we all know this.
I didn't think it was the
Would it
private
help-
road
help
was the
Yes,
issue.
we've
I
I've
thought
heard that
It
three
is the
times.
private road.
It's the private drive.
I thought it was
Yeah.
two separate parcels,
What happened in one
so the
property
neighboring
versus
parcel
put
was
a
still,
Private drive here.
so it was a parcel separating.
Well, there are two parcels, one's residential, one's B4, but there's a road that goes
Oh, I
between
see.
the two.
It's a road is the reason
Yeah.
why
And
we
that,
didn't
that
put
was
the
Tim's
screening
excuse.
on the south side.
Because it separates the two parcels, yes.
I see, okay,
That was the argument.
I thought it was because it was the same owner's
okay.
second parcel, so there was a
No.
parcel in between the other.
Two different parcels.
Hmm.
And so,
So
while
I don't know
we're-
whether we can, how we do that so that it's clear that even here, when we talk about screening. Or was that just
I
a
think this would
oversight?
deal with it. It says evergreen screening shall be required whenever the facility is located within 250 feet of a residentially zoned property, so
But
it
this,
doesn't mean, it doesn't matter what's intervening.
Yeah, well, and
but I think,
because I want because what they're talking about is they're talking about a large parcel where a portion of it, that the special use, that portion that does abut residential, it is screened. It is, it's the portion of the parcel that is not used as a special use, there's permitted uses. That's where the, because
But that's
We-
the access to the special use.
well, but it's an access to all the uses.
Yes.
And so
Right.
the thing that I wanted to, that I can just bring up to you guys is, if you want to consider looking at not special uses, just if it's a business use that, and it, okay, so you have a road that goes through it. If you have a business on one side of the road, let's say it's on Isabella Road and you have residential across the street, are we now gonna say that that business permitted use now has to screen along Isabella Road, pretty much hide their business because there's a house across the street from them?
private road might help with that. And that would only, I would only care against residents, right?
Mhm.
We're not talking about a public road here, right? In this
Correct.
particular case.
Correct.
But how do you
but I
word it in a
think
way that's
it-
not just, I mean, we're addressing a specific issue, how do you word it in a way that applies to broadly?
Well, but that's an issue that could be, again, in these larger parcels for development could happen again. It's like, wait a minute, we want you to develop that, but we also want to protect the residents.
So in reality, what we're really
So it is
looking
a
for
private
is
road.
just greater discretion to require screening.
So why did Tim say, well, this is a private drive, we are not required to have screening against the residential?
Well, it doesn't matter whether they're private or public, it's the idea that it's a road. So whether it's
He
a
was saying
private
it-
road or
That's
public
what,
road.
that's
Yeah.
how we're talking.
Yeah.
But why did Tim use that as the reasoning why we couldn't tell him to put screen? Not that it was part of that conversation, but he's the one that offered that, oh, that's a private road. We're not required to.
Probably because there's nothing in the ordinance that requires us to screen a private road.
So we need to have something, a tool for us.
And I guess what I'm saying when I say we need greater discretion is that we don't necessarily need to make it always a requirement, but we need the option to require it.
Yes.
Okay, so that should be in the private road area, not in the self-storage.
Yeah, because I don't think it applies to
Okay.
self-storage. This
Okay.
is a general, potentially
Okay,
general
yes.
issue.
Okay,
Right.
private.
It should
okay,
have been
be on
in the
private
site
road.
plan review.
Yes. That's where we need it.
That's where it should have been.
That's where we
There is a difference between the wording here and the wording in the existing ordinance. existing ordinance says greenbelt planting and screening will be required so as to obscure view from any adjacent residential district. And, it does say screening will also be required where properties within 200. Okay. There's sort of a conflict there, but you could make the argument that because the private road separated the self-storage facility from the residential, it was no longer adjacent.
I think that's the argument he made.
Pardon?
I think that's the argument that the applicant made.
And I left that sentence out in the revised language.
So could we have required screening along that private road during the site plan review? Would that have been?
I think that
We discussed it, and we said that would be good for you to do, but I think we felt like we couldn't require it.
wasn't the complication that the private road serves the use by right as well as the
Yeah, it
special
serves, yeah,
use?
Right.
And so
yeah.
the special use is only way back there. It's not there where the private road is closest to the apartments.
But even in the case of use by right, we knew we were gonna have a lot of traffic going in and out of that facility.
Right.
And we wanted to be able to
But our,
protect the residents that were right next
right,
to
but
the
our
road.
ordinance doesn't allow for that right now, right?
It's just that one building in the very back.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it's pretty good, but it's just that one, right at the curve. It's like,
And I could see this happening out on Bluegrass where we have lots of dense housing there and someone builds a private road to give access to a larger facility, right? And we wanna be able to protect that dense housing that's there.
Well, maybe you want some sort of discretion in the sections dealing with the various business zones for the planning commission to require screening when it's close to a residential
Residential.
use.
Even if there's a private road
Mhm.
in between the development
Yeah.
itself and the residents.
Right.
I can tell you that the light issue is not coming from the mini storage.
No.
That restaurant and bar,
yes, it's coming
That's
from the
gonna-
people
Um,
of that road.
yeah.
Yeah,
People
it's-
using
it's
the road,
traffic.
we're tying it to the mini storage, but it's not the
It's not,
mini storage.
it's not, right.
Yeah,
Right.
Oh,
correct.
right. I
So
agree.
is there a way, or is it too much of an overreach to simply say that the planning commission should have something somewhere in the ordinance that says the planning commission can use discretion in unique circumstances to ensure that screening is provided when there is concern for residential exposure? I mean, across all districts. Is that too much of an overreach to give the planning commission that type of discretion to ask for more than is required if the situation warrants it?
Well, I always hesitate to, when we get into the issue of discretionary decision-making, because according to the enabling legislation, whenever you have discretionary decision-making, it's supposed to fall into the category of special land use, and you're supposed to have a public hearing. And so I prefer to have standards.
Yeah, we're permitted.
And the only reason why I brought up about that road with the special, self-storage is because in the egress, they talked about the public road. Okay, I understand they had the public road, but we also know that they're accessing that storage units by a private road.
Well, the complex, they're accessing the complex.
Yes, and so I can do it, and so that's the only reason why I brought that up, but I get it.
So can we put something in
Well,
that
again,
addresses screening in private roads and parking? We have a parking section.
I think that's where it probably goes to set here.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't
Yes,
think it goes
yes, I would agree,
This is a general issue that
Yes.
could come up.
yes, I would agree.
So, to the self-storage, it says no outside storage. So in the last review that we had for the addition of mini storage at McGurk's, they're using, it's kind of like they've got some of their landscape material in their mini storage boundaries, right? And so, because we allowed that, it's one of the borders, whatever, would we be going against the no outside storage permitted?
Yes, and no retail sales, that's their permit. But I think the Board of Trustees made special.
And so it's kind of confusing, because everybody's gonna go, well, hey, they got it, and you wrote this again, so do we need to change something to address future requests?
I don't think we need to change anything to allow retail sales or outside storage. If somebody's been grandfathered, that's one thing, but I don't think that means we need to let everybody do it.
And I think the intent of the outdoor
Okay.
storage here is open pens, right? For
Well, the-
renting
Right.
purposes.
Yeah. The
To
only
put
thing
all
that I
your
would, that, or
Cars or
maybe,
chickens.
maybe this
Cars,
helps.
chickens, right.
Yeah, maybe this would help clarify it, is whereas there's no outdoor storage allowed in the self-storage, for the self-storage use, so
Can't
if
park
if
campers.
I come to the business owner and I say I wanna store some stuff outside, they're not supposed to allow me to store stuff outside. It has to be stored in the self-storage unit. The stuff that is outside stored is outdoor storage that is for the permitted use. It's not to deal with the self-storage
That
use.
permitted use is on a different parcel.
No, it's all the same parcel. It's just in a
It's all
different
one
area.
parcel?
When it was approved, it was all one parcel.
Oh, that's right, the special use was
Defined
just
by boundary.
defining that boundary.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when it was approved, it is restricted to that area. It can't move without a new approval, so.
I stand corrected, right, I forgot that.
Okay. If nobody had anything else, we moved to 6.39 solar energy systems, which is an important one that we have, and it is about 8:30 now. Do we want to tackle this one now? Or I would recommend that we do. If you have any questions for the consultant, because as we said at the last Planning Commission regularly scheduled, that we wanted to wait until we could discuss this topic with our consultant.
Well, I think at the time we had said, or at least I had said that, so this is the language that was proposed but not adopted. And the applicant that had come before us was suggesting that they were committing to this language.
Yep. Basically, what they've proposed is the 6.39, which you also got at a previous earlier time. They took that draft, and now they are asking you to adopt it into this current zoning ordinance, not wait until the new zoning ordinance is written. And so this gives you an opportunity to discuss with Chris any kind of questions, concerns, you have with that proposed section 6.39.
So Chris, you understand
Yeah,
what's in front of us is that we were asked to consider enacting 6.39 as its own ordinance for now, right? So the concern I had in that meeting, which still stands, is do we have all the definitions in our current ordinance that apply to this, or do we have to move some additional definitions into this? Or so that's one of the
Well,
things I
this
would want
is-
to make sure we have.
I think pretty much self-contained.
Yeah, I thought so too. But I wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah, I don't know that I didn't have any concerns necessarily with what I'm looking at here. Of course, I certainly no expert on it, so I don't know what concerns I should have, but I think we just had kind of delayed it until after we were able to meet with Chris again to see if there's anything we did need to discuss, but
Is the facility you're looking at one that's intended to provide solar energy on-site? or-
On site. It's an existing building, and they have 3 rows, accessory structure in the rear yard, panels, and then it's going to provide energy to that building on site.
I see.
The issue with that one is that they want ground mounted, and the current ordinance only allows for roof mounted, is that right?
Yeah, the only thing in our current ordinance that speaks of solar energy is on the roof, specifically with dwellings.
Yeah. Okay. I have one just kind of terminology thing. There may be other substantive questions, but in B7 of that section, you define a solar electric system, but I'm wondering if it really is solar energy system, because it doesn't seem like it's restricted to just electricity. It also talks about thermal energy.
Yeah, I think that's, that should be energy.
I had some other questions because I read through it when we had the other meeting, but I left that at home.
I mean,
I don't have it in front of me.
there's like a period after some of these, but not all of them. Is there a reason for that? Like after purpose, there's not one on A and B. I mean, some of them do and some don't. That's why I don't know.
There
if
should
there's-
be a period.
So there's just a couple of periods missing.
So you're talking about in the headlines like A, B,
Yeah, A
C,
and
D.
B's missing one, and then down further, next page.
So to install one of these, we're gonna require somebody to have a professional engineer draw a site plan and do a stormwater management plan. And then wait 6 months for the county to review it. Is that what our intention is?
We don't, are you being facetious
No,
about waiting
that's
6
what
months?
we're saying in here, right here. They have to get a stormwater management plan approved. Then they have to have an engineer do an as-built survey. And the records are gonna be kept here.
Well, and the,
It
how
just
this,
seems
yeah.
doesn't seem cost effective for somebody to spend $5,000 for a plan to do it, and $5,000 to have somebody as-built survey it.
Just
Well-
to see if it's gonna pass or get approved, is that what you mean?
That's- That's the structure to support the solar panel.
Well, I get it. Your stormwater's gonna be, you're gonna be shedding water off this thing. It's still the same water that's hitting the ground.
Yes.
That's a good question. I don't,
And with our
I don't know.
setbacks not falling on the neighbor's property.
I'm trying to encourage people maybe to go this way, but there's so many steps here and so much money to put out for this. Is it even feasible?
well, the current applicant that we have before us, because how this started is they applied for a site plan and I had to reject the site plan. And so then they applied for this text amendment, and if you, in their application, they have said that they are able to abide by all the regulations of this. So, I mean, we have one now developer saying, I can do all of this, I'm fine with it.
but I think Alex makes a good point.
Yeah, I know.
Are-
Yeah, I
are
got
we-
you.
I mean, I gotta think, unless you put in impervious substrate of some sort, right? I mean, like cement or something that's gonna change the water going into the ground.
Well, I suppose you could come in, if you have something that has, rapidly shifting contours, and you come in and flatten it so you can put in solar there, then you are changing your drainage,
Yeah,
but.
right.
I think most structures that support, solar panels are built off a pillar system. So it's gonna be a pillar in the ground, maybe foot to a foot and a half in diameter. It's not gonna be a flat work that's gonna dump into a certain area like a.
I would,
parking lot.
and I would tend to agree,
If they did
unless,
grading, it seems like they'd have to pull a grading permit then, right? And if they had to pull a grading permit.
that'll
would
trigger,
that trigger stormwater management?
Yeah, but
We have a whole section
Think it
on
does.
grading permits back
Yeah.
here that goes, that is new.
Right.
But if they did build this on a big concrete slab, that would change the amount of water that,
Most of the regulations in this section deal with the primary use solar energy facilities, which are the larger ones, larger facilities that are going to be connected to the grid. And in the case that you're looking at, this is a direct use solar energy facility. The requirements aren't that rigorous, really.
Okay.
so,
Yeah, that'd be 6.39 B, and then 8, where it talks about uses allowed means one of the following: direct use, an SEF designed and installed to provide on-site energy demand for any legally established use of the property. So that's what we have, that's what the current applicant that we have before us would qualify.
He qualifies for direct use?
Yeah.
According to this?
Yeah.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Okay.
So then it
That's
isn't
why
as
I
bad. I guess I didn't understand the primary use, seemed like primary, I'd be the sole user,
No, it's the reverse.
reverse.
Yeah, for use off-site.
Right, okay.
So does that alleviate that concern then?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I have no problem with that, solar being, recommended to be added to the current
The-
zoning.
Yeah, the one thing I'd point out that I liked about it when I read it, when Chris gave it to us earlier in the year, is, which is a big thing around the state when I've gone to seminars on this topic of wind energy and solar, is the very end of it where it includes a decommissioning plan as far as what to do when,
Mm-hmm.
these may not be used anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So setbacks, so on a roof, that's pretty clear that you're
Mhm.
not setback. But if you're doing a ground mounted, explain to me the minimum setback. Primary use facility is 75 feet. And then the direct use, which is what I would use, right, because I'm not feeding the grid, shall conform to the setbacks per zoning. So rear yard, side yard, front yard for a structure, correct?
Right.
And I'm not sure about, so we say height is measured from finished grade. So if I build my grade up 5 feet, I can go that much higher. Are we gonna allow people to do that?
Build the grade up so they can get over their fence and get some
Go a little
sun.
higher, get over the neighbor's house.
Get over the neighbor's house to get some
Get over the
sun.
neighbor's trees.
Well, you're going to need a grading permit,
Well, that's true.
which means that
You can't build a mountain in your
Right.
backyard.
Right. There's a grading permit section here, read 50 yards or more, you need a grading permit.
you're going to have to demonstrate that you're not going to cause off-site flooding by building your site up.
Right.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is if they're gonna raise the grade 3 feet up and then start there.
I would imagine 15 feet is pretty adequate. I mean, rid of your house, either your house is 11, 12.
Yeah.
But I think for people that may have a congested yard, and want solar and they aren't putting it on the roof for whatever reason,
Right.
people look at you bring the engineer in and goes, well, you got obstructions there. And then they start reading this and go, I can adjust my finished
Right.
grade.
I mean, there's all sorts of what ifs. I mean,
No, yeah, I agree, I'm just,
I think they should just cut down a tree then.
didn't know if
Remove the
we
obstruction.
define it.
In other words, you're not allowing another Bundy Hill.
You can't.
Well,
Township.
we restrict single family restrict to 35 feet, right? Height? We should never-
That's
we
the
should
maximum
never-
height, 35 feet.
We should never get anywhere near that with 15 feet, so.
right.
Okay, never mind, thinking out loud.
Okay. Moving on to section 6.4.
So let me just ask real quick,
No
Chris,
problem.
do you see any issue with if we were to recommend this to the Board of Trustees to implement
No,
this?
I don't see any problem with that.
Thank you. Sorry, Peter.
Nope, you're good. Section 6.4, private swimming pools.
Are you gonna approve their pool discharge size? It says size approved by zoning.
Yeah, proposed.
Yeah, a lot of the, because I think a lot of that has been taken over into the building official.
Department. That's about the building official and the zoning official.
Should that say building official and
Yeah.
IOC?
E confused me a little bit, for height fencing, because it seems like it might be different for an above ground versus an in-ground pool.
Mhm.
For an in-ground pool, 4 feet is a barrier, right? But if it's above ground, don't you want that fencing covering at least the edge of the pool?
I think the fencing is,
Is the pool itself?
I was gonna say, because this has come up, the building official, well, multiple building officials have talked with, because there is something in the building code with swimming pools to where this doesn't actually match up with, I think, the building code. And so we've talked about getting those two in sync.
So, I'll tell you what I went through with Randy. I'm not completely enclosed, so that wording is not right. So my sidewall of my pool is 50, or it's above 48 inches. So I'm not required to have any fencing there. But the accessibility, as soon as I go above, so I step up and I have grade there, now I have to be enclosed at that point. So Randy's looking around the pool and he says, well, you have to have accessibility from here and accessibility from here. It's a lockable gate. And then once you're through that gate, it's gotta have 4-foot fence, so nobody can breach that, alright? But because the sidewall of my pool is greater than 48 inches, I'm not required to have it there. So completely enclosed doesn't make sense.
So maybe we need to look at the state code.
I'll look at the building code.
Okay.
And I think we should allow electrical wiring above the pool. That seems reasonable. Probably a building code for that one.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Okay, 6.41 veterinary services. Six point 4.2 wind energy conversion systems. This is another section that we were given earlier, I believe. And so if you want to take some time on this one.
The one question I had on this, I think it's, C4. And I didn't have a chance to look this up in our existing ordinance. But this requires minimum lot size of 2 acres. And I thought what the township did about 10 years ago is they said, well, if you and your neighbor have, let's say 2 acres was the requirement. If you and your neighbor have 2 acres, you can agree to combine and get the wind turbine that between the two of you, even though you don't meet a single parcel size of 2 acres. There's a way to encourage homeowners to put some of the small turbines in their yard, right?
Oh, I see.
why do you need 2 acres?
I think the idea is that you don't have this in high density areas, right, where it might bother your neighbor. but this only caught my eye because the existing ordinance, Peter, are you familiar with that? And this is my memory from long ago.
Yeah, I've never had to, it's a section of the ordinance I've never had to deal with. I mean, what you're saying makes sense. But then, I mean, you have to, if we allow that, you'd want it written to where both owners would have to.
Yeah, and I think it was like that in our existing ordinance. I just didn't have a chance to go back and look it up in our old one.
So then what? Two owners are sharing the electricity from one?
Yeah, the idea was if you have less than 2 acres, but you have neighboring properties that are willing to do it with you, maybe that all that means is both your neighbors say, yeah, you can do this.
So a combination of 2 acres.
Or maybe it might be my property and properties on either side. I'm getting essentially permission from my neighbors to say, yeah, go ahead and put a wind turbine in your yard. Between the 3 of us, we're 3 acres, or 2 acres, or whatever the requirement is.
And then that person sells their house. Your neighbor sells their house, and you have I guess I don't understand why.
We have to encourage.
No, I get the idea of encouraging, but I don't understand. I mean, on 2 acres, if I put a turbine near my property line, I mean, at 75 feet tall or however many feet tall it is, the neighbor's going to see it. There could be another residence 10 foot away from the property line. And I don't know why 2 acres is the cutoff versus 1 acre or half acre. I don't know.
Actually, I think the setbacks are gonna be more determinant of lot area than any minimum that we set forth.
So there was on Broomfield, you remember, it was put right in the front yard. It was that kind of hip roof house there. I think Jeff Brown lives there now.
Yeah.
There was a wind turbine there.
And that wasn't 2 acres.
It wasn't 2 acres.
Right.
I don't know how did that get permitted?
That was the only use of this that I was aware of. Because I remember when that happened, that's why I was aware of our ordinance having some latitude for this.
The reason why I asked that about the acreage size, number one, is because he was permitted to do it. Number two, because I talked to the guy about it, and he produced a phenomenal amount of energy. He took it down to take it with him.
Right.
He moved to another property, took that one down, and put 2 up at the next property because he was so pleased with the performance of the system. I don't know. I mean,
Heck, we're gonna have 600-foot ones around here pretty soon.
yeah, I don't know. To me, it's
Was it like these out here?
yeah,
Was exactly.
yeah, like the taller ones.
The fan blades?
Yeah, not the spider,
Right.
not the spider
Right.
like this, but the.
Yeah, yep.
It was exactly that same model. When they put these in, that's when they did the ordinance. And so that allowed our township to put them in here and at the other well station south of town. And that's when he put that in on Brookfield. Would you mind looking at our existing ordinance on this issue? And I mean, I don't know how, maybe the planning commission feels differently. It seemed to me that it'd be nice to keep that kind of encouragement.
I just feel as though, I mean, I think we should be encouraging the use of solar. I think we should encourage the use of wind. And I mean, if there's a strong rationale, as to why the lot size or the setback has to be so substantial, then let's hear it. But if there's not, then I think we should err on the side of promoting it rather than, making it impossible to discouraging it. So I get that, if you go out to Copper Estates or whatever it is and you got the postage stamp size lots, I get that there's no room to really put a pole out there, and because the anchoring and the footings that are required are substantial, and so some of those lots are too small to even dig a hole to put the footings in, but
Is this and the wind, or I'm sorry, the solar, Chris, pretty boilerplate?
Well, it's an evolving,
Right, but it is,
thing.
it's something you'll carry in your next job, and
Yeah,
you may improve it in some way and
right.
recommend.
It's constantly changing with technology.
Because as the technologies and the turbines themselves get more efficient, then you can do more with less wind and shorter towers and things like that too. Particularly if they're, and I don't know if we have this in our code or not, but if we don't, then, I mean, do we have anything that addresses actual on-site residential batteries for the storage of electricity?
State may have regulated that.
The state regulates it?
Well, I don't know if it passed. They were looking at regulating so that you could not use your own power. You had to buy, you could buy it wholesale, but you had to sell your power.
At the time that he put his in on Broomfield Road, he had to sell his power. But, I mean, I can go out right now and buy a battery now.
Had to sell it?
He had to sell it.
Well, but
He told me he
the
did.
lobbyists for the, like consumers, et cetera, they don't want you storing it. They want it on the grid.
Yeah.
Because you have to buy it back. You sell it to them for less than you have to buy it back. So actually, they've kind of screwed some of the homeowners.
It's discouraged, yeah, yeah, I guess off-grid, but I guess it's something worth looking into is whether or not we should address it on a local level or whether or not the state regulates on-site battery storage, because that's coming too. I mean,
Right?
you can buy a Powerwall right now.
You gotta do that.
What's that?
If you wanna be completely off the grid, you gotta store the power.
Well, that is
No.
true, but I guess my point is that I can go to Tesla and buy a Powerwall right now. It's on the market, so if I go buy a Powerwall battery and put it in my house, shouldn't we regulate, or shouldn't we at least, if the state's not doing it, shouldn't the township be saying, this is what you gotta do if you're gonna put that kind of high voltage in your house? I don't know. Seems like we should have something, if the state's not.
Wouldn't that, would that possibly be part of the electrical code approval system? I mean, it's electrical equipment, right?
It is. That's what I mean. I don't know if it's covered elsewhere or not,
Yeah.
but yeah. It's,
Yeah, I don't think with the setbacks of these towers, you'd be able to put it on anything less than 2 acres.
I remember discussing, again, with the homeowner at the time, that he said that the rationale for, I had asked about the setbacks, and he said that there was a rationale going around that if the pole fell, that they wanted it to be able to fall on the homeowner's property. My rationale was, if I have an oak or a maple or anything else that's 50 foot tall, and that falls, I can plant that right on my property line, and that's gonna fall on somebody else's property. And it's not anchored as well as a turbine is, and turbine's got God knows how many yards of cement in the ground. The turbine is gonna stand better than a rotted oak tree is, so.
Where's the setbacks
It's 150%.
150%,
tower height.
yeah.
But that's in utility scale,
So I said,
right? I was looking for, on site.
That would be
right?
C3. C3 was the minimum setback. Are you saying that's
Oh,
No,
the
it's
utility?
150
150%
for
there, too.
on-site.
Okay, I was reading this one, I couldn't
Yeah,
find that
so we
one.
have 75 footer, you gotta be minimum 250 foot wide by 150, more than 150 foot deep. Plus you have to have a house on it, so.
Yeah, so you got a pretty small radius you can put it on.
So again, the need for the 2 acres of land minimum.
Right, I have 2.5 acres and it wouldn't fit on mine.
I guess that's what I'm questioning is the setbacks. If that's necessary.
And 75 feet, that's pretty big. How big are these, do you know?
They're not 75 feet.
No.
No.
In our current zoning ordinance, I think
I
it
don't
talks about 65 feet does
40 maybe, 35?
So I don't think you want a 75 footer in a.
I mean, at what point, I'm trying to think about what the repeating towers are for the fire departments. I mean, there's a certain level that you have to have a light on the tower once it gets a certain height. And
That's dictated by the FAA.
right, but it's not, there's some pretty tall towers around here, and I don't think there's any lights on our fire towers, or repeating towers out here. Not in Union, Deerfield, Nottawa, Sherman. I don't think anybody's got lights on their towers. And those are big towers.
Where do we go with this?
I like it. Good starting point.
Yeah, see, I don't mind the extra restriction since this is something new. I think we can always loosen it later on.
It's not new though.
Well, I mean, for the township, it's semi-new.
No, we've had a wind ordinance for, an energy ordinance for at least a decade.
Well, yeah,
I would
we, yeah.
say
Well, that's
that
good,
gets
and
cost prohibitive for most people.
Well, I was gonna say, that
Yeah.
it's something that we've had
15
on the books. We haven't had a lot of use of it. Like I said, it's not a section that I'm very familiar with because I haven't had to use it. And so I guess, you know, what's being proposed here, I guess we could see if it actually prohibits, you know, people from then using it, and we can always, you know, text amend, you know, but I don't know if it's, because what we even have on the books right now, it's not, we don't have people lined up out the door, you know.
Well, that, hopefully, I mean, that's likely gonna change.
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. But what I'm saying is, as of what I would know right now, what we even have right now isn't prohibiting, you know, people from.
is
having
it too restrictive? Is that-
Yeah, isn't too
Yeah.
restrictive.
The two things that usually prohibit it is the restrictions on installation, such as setbacks, and ability to store energy. Those are the two things that typically, I mean, price is obviously a factor for everybody, but when consumers have the ability to store energy, we're going to see more and more solar and wind popping up, because then they're not, then they're off grid. Then they got their own generator from the wind and the solar.
With respect to the setbacks, the applicant, the owner, always has the option of requesting a variance, correct?
That's true.
Yeah.
With a 75-foot tower, which is the maximum for on-site tower, they would need a minimum of 39,740 square feet.
Just under 2 acre, just under an acre.
Right.
Yeah. Acres 43,560.
But this,
Right.
Yeah, that's talking about putting it right in the middle of the property.
yeah.
Put your
But this
house
would
in.
be the type of thing where, you know, we've realized through experience, based on numbers of people applying for variances, whether something is out of line. This would be the type of thing where, to me anyway, until you determine that those setbacks are impractical, I guess I would err on the larger side. And then if it turns out that people are wanting these things, and it's becoming a you know, more common thing, then revisit it, would be my suggestion.
Okay, next one.
So
Um,
next- nope.
Should we, not that I'm not having a thrill ride here, but given that we have Chris here, do we need to address how long we want to run this meeting?
It's about another, well, I was gonna say another minute and then the clock changed.
Well, yeah, the one thing I wanted to bring up to you guys, because of course we had 5 sections here, and we're not done with one of them yet. Although this is the largest section of the 5, and the largest one that we've done out of all 10. I don't know if you guys want to just try to get done with section 6 here, and then call it a night. I don't think we're gonna. We've already been here 3 hours. The other thing to consider is we have, the way we designed this is a total possible 5 meetings. We break down the ordinance into 3 parts. That's meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3. We have a 4th meeting reserved to where if we couldn't get through the entire ordinance in 3 meetings, that we could use that 4th. And then that 5th final meeting is to review the sum of all those individual meetings, which would be all 15 sections.
We could probably have another special meeting just with us to continue to go through it, and then use that for our next meeting with Chris as well, right? Use what we've gone through
Yep.
Speed it up and.
to speed it up
Yeah.
with, give him maybe a report that we can discuss.
And let me see what we even have left here in section 6. We have telecommunication facilities, wireless. Yard sales, garage sales, auctions,
retail and service in industrial districts, indoor commercial recreation uses, brew pubs, microbreweries, and small distillers, donation bins, accessory apartment, multiple family and single family attached housing requirements, open space preservation.
I don't think we're gonna
Can
get
we
through
stop
six.
for now?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have been here 3 hours.
Yeah.
I would like to schedule, I mean, I personally would support another special meeting to continue to go through it, but I don't think we're gonna get through 6
Yeah.
in the next 30 to
Yeah.
60 minutes.
So do you guys want to finish 6 on our own without Chris? And then, or do we want to, because like I said, we
Wanna
have,
meet back up again, I would think.
Yeah,
'Cause
I would
we-
think so.
yeah, because right now we have the 5 meetings to use, and we want to be able to get through all of it in the 5 meetings.
Well, we might have to pony up another one if it doesn't happen.
But if we do one more, if we do a meeting on our own to see what we can get through on 6, maybe we get through it with minimal questions or just some changes and then we can jump in on next meeting with Chris, moving on to section 7.
Yep.
We can do that.
I did have one question though before we go for Chris, is why, in the back, I think it's section 6.57 and on, it says reserved. What would those sections be reserved for?
I wasn't gonna say.
Well, the last 5 sections all deal with residential land uses. And I wanted to keep those together. And so I left a few sections reserved so that there's the opportunity to add more non-residential in the future if the occasion comes up that they are needed. So there's a possibility that there's uses that we haven't even thought about today that we want to add standards for, that you'll have the space reserved for them.
That's a good idea, because I've noticed in our current zoning ordinance, when we've had to do amendments, for example, if we had to fit something between 6.49 and 6.5, we would call it 6.495. And so if we leave some reserved open spaces, it helps with those future additions.
Like he's done this before.
Not that they have to be filled up, but they're there.
And I have a really quick, easy one. It was my last comment anyways. We added distillers to the microbrews, but we
Yeah.
didn't deal with wineries that as a potential.
Yeah, and I had some questions here about the distillers, but yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to get in the section now, but.
Right, but wineries are the same thing. In fact, sometimes the wineries and the distillers go hand in hand.
I had a question on brew pubs too.
I also have a question on the accessory apartments. Some questions, I should say. So I have questions. We've got plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe you picked up on something there, Ryan, that maybe the best use of our time is to maybe continue going through some of this ourselves, and then the questions and concerns that we generate, then when we invite Chris back, we'd be ready to
ask.
go
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
this is our, forget 90% of it, Chris, this is the 10% that we have a problem with.
Right.
I think that would be the
Okay.
best use of his time.
Yes. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And I can even get you those questions in advance so that you're ready to.
That would be excellent.
Yeah, not line you up and say, hey, by the way, Chris, get ready.
What, for doing that type of thing, in terms of things like Open Meetings Act and so on, is it required that we meet together, or can we submit our questions to you and then have you kind of, I don't know.
I think it's helpful to hear discussion.
Yeah, no,
I agree with that in general, but I'm just looking for efficiencies also.
Yeah, no, I think the best efficient way would be is we can schedule a time where we meet and we'll continue going through these sections. In the meantime, at your own personal time to review these, if you want to bring, like all of you have done today, you had questions and concerns ready to go. Have those ready for us to bring up and talk amongst ourselves, and then we'll develop more questions. But if you have anything, that particular you wanna email out to me and, send out to the group. I noticed this while I was reviewing section 7.
We just don't wanna get into debate.
Yeah, you can
If
send
we
out your
violate
we can distribute our observations.
Right.
Just don't get into, well, I think you're crazy for thinking,
And the reason for that is the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
You could be in violation.
Yeah, I understood that we can't be deliberating or making decisions, but I was looking for efficiencies and keeping the number of actual meetings to a minimum, but
I
it
think-
sounds like we can't really avoid that.
But I think, I think we can, if we do have anything in the meantime, as long as we're sending something to the group, we can just send, if I have a list of questions about the sections I've read, I can send it to the group, and my questions are out there now, as long as we don't deliberate. And from that standpoint, when we do meet again, then at least people have seen my questions, and if anybody else is so inclined, they can do the same thing.
Just try to avoid like leading questions, right?
Right. Right.
I'm just saying, that if we ever get called on, it could be seen as, right, not trying to lead a conclusion as much as I have a question about this, why is this so small, or why is this
Yeah.
so big?
Yeah.
Right.
Just keep it to comments only, that's it, just comment. Okay. Well, with that, the last 4 parts of our agenda.
Yeah. Other business, any other business? Sounds like not, thank you. Extended public comment, anybody want to address the commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not? Give us your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Extended public comments open at 9:08. Seeing none, we'll close that back up. Final board comment, any comments from commissioners?
As far as our special meeting, do you guys want me to try to schedule it again with the same parameters of trying not to line up back-to-back meetings, separate week maybe, from when we typically meet?
If possible, yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll have to give us some options probably and see when the most people are available.
Yep.
Anything else?
Last week of June's good for me, but July's not.
July starts to get rough.
Mm-hmm.
Although the lakes are probably still ice water.
At least they're full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, well then, it sounds like we've completed our agenda, or at least as much as we're good for tonight, so we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome.